always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
My name is Kevin. I'm 30 years old, and I was Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, Kevin. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was kind of like born into it. My family, I'm not entirely sure the history behind it. It's all kind of on my mother's side. Um, my grandparents, I believe, were into it first. I know my grandmother and my grandfather were, and then my mom kind of studied around when I was 3 or 4 years old and ended up converting, I believe, when I was like 8.
Okay. And so you say your grandmother started then, and then how did it trickle down to your mom, or your mom?
I think it was kind of like the thing is, when it comes to like my childhood, my parents, my mom and my stepdad they weren't transparent about it. And so a lot of it, I knew, knowing, looking back now, it was kind of whitewashed in a way. So I never really was willing to or able to get all the details that I needed. But like I know it started with my grandparents. I believe they were in it for a few years. It's just like nobody else, like none of the younger kids, they were already all adults. So none of them really switched over. And to this day, my mom was the only one out of my grandparents' kids that ended up becoming Jehovah's Witness. I think she kind of used it more of an escape rather than like genuinely want to do it. I guess back then, so I mentioned my stepdad. My mom was married before him, which is with my dad, but he's Muslim. And so he got into some legal trouble, went to prison for 6 years. And so she kind of used the religion as a way to get divorced. She was like, well, now I'm baptized Jehovah's Witness. If you don't convert, then I'm not going to allow you to see your son. I'm not going to allow you to be in my life. We're going to have to get divorced. And so he obviously was like, well, no, I'm not going to give up my beliefs just for what you want. And basically just made him sign over everything. And I'll get into that later, but basically just kind of blocked him or his existence for me for most of my life.
Wow. At the beginning of almost everybody's JW origin story lies somebody that was in a vulnerable position. Somebody, your father went to prison for some time, and here she is, she's vulnerable, and then she falls into Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yep.
You talked about using it as an escape. Yeah, that's kind of what it is for most people, is an escape. And so but I'm sorry to hear that was the origin for you guys. That's tough. So how old were you then when you can like remember going to meetings or anything like that? Like, how old were you?
I have some brief memories, I believe around 4 or 5.
Okay, so pretty young.
Yeah, because I know like my grandparents, they were going. And I remember being in the Kingdom Hall with my grandmother and my grandfather. My mom, I really don't have any memories of her being there. I think that was when she was like, getting around to it or studying. But yeah, that's kind of like the initial memories that I had. We grew up in the Spanish Kingdom Hall. And so um, that's just kind of what I remember. I know like all my grandmother's friends, they were all Jehovah's, like JWs, the older ladies. So I have a lot of memories with like going with my grandmother, going to like these different people's houses. They play like dominoes or some old people card games.
Hey, now I resemble that.
It was like I forgot what it was. It was like the cards, but like instead of like, the ace of spades or whatever, it was like the little club or like these different little like cups instead. Like I forgot what they were called, but yeah, those.
Gotcha. Okay. This is the simple games. I mean, the things that you see often played in the congregations and such.
Yeah.
So for yourself, so you said that 4 or 5, you have some little memories of going to meetings. So what did it mean to you? What was the worldview that the religion gave you even as a little kid? How did you what did it mean to you? How did you see the world around you?
Honestly, it didn't really mean anything. I was a kid. Like I just wanted to watch cartoons. I was always a little bit. Like looking back again, I look like I was a little bit weird. I kind of always stood out, little odd man out. But then like I didn't care. I was a kid. I just wanted to hang out, have fun. It was just this is the life that I had. There was no reason for me to question it. It didn't seem any different to me. Uh, I don't have any memories of ever being like, wow, I feel like I'm left out or I'm missing out. It was just this is what I do. We weren't like super hardcore into it yet at that point, so it wasn't like so much of my life was restricted yet. It basically felt like it was just like a regular family that goes to church on the weekends.
Gotcha. Um, so yeah, it was just your life. But I love what you said about I was just a little kid. I wanted to watch cartoons and play with my friends or whatever. I mean, that's what childhood should be.
Exactly.
Whereas most of us were worried about the end of the world and fire from the heavens and such. So I'm glad that you got to experience some of that. So things, I guess, changed as time went on, and we'll kind of get into some of that. So let's talk a little bit about, growing up as a witness for you and what some of the different environments were like. So what was life like at home for you guys?
So initially we moved around a lot. That was kind of a theme that kept up, honestly, even till just recently. But so at that time when we got into the religion, we were living in New Jersey. And my mom married my stepfather. The way she met him was she was studying with his parents. And then, they got her to get baptized, and, he was there. He was, I think, 18 at the time. And so within a year, she married him at 19. So that was like our first big move. We lived in Trenton, New Jersey. And so we went from kind of one shitty area to another shitty area. That was like my first sense of being afraid, because now I wasn't with my grandparents. And like I remember like going to sleep and there was like sirens everywhere, and like looking back, like now I know like those are like gunshots that I heard, and like I had to sleep downstairs for whatever reason. I think my room was like being painted or something. So I remember always being scared. But yeah, that was like our first move. And then I think we stayed there for a few months, and we moved to an apartment with my stepdad's sister. And then I think there's another move in between there. Like all within a year, we moved 3 times to 3 different areas.
Wow.
But we stayed in the same kingdom hall. We moved to an English kingdom hall, and that's my stepfather doesn't speak any Spanish, and so we stayed in the same one. That was where his parents went to.
Did your mom have you kind of young?
I don't think so. My mom was, I think at the time she was 26. She had me when she was, well, actually, I guess she did. I think she had me when I was like she was 19. But yeah, by the time that she got married, I think she was like 26, 27. He was 19.
Oh, so she was a little bit older. This wasn't around her being
Yeah,
around 18, 19. Oh, okay.
yeah. I
Sounds like if
guess,
she's
yeah, there's
18, 19, she's got you already, and you're trying to do the math there.
the math.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like he's like 11 years older than me, which is kind of odd. He's my stepdad, but he's 11 years difference. It was
Gotcha.
interesting.
Okay. So it sounds like they got married and instantly were moved away from some of the family that you knew, your grandparents,
hmm
into some various areas. So that's a lot of change. What else started to change as you guys, got together and moved? Like
It
what
was
was the atmosphere like in your home growing up? Was the temperature of the room, so to speak? Was it a happy place? Was it stressful?
so it stopped being happy and it started being stressful, and it kind of just started getting like worse from there. That was kind of like the beginning of it. Because growing up with my grandparents, like my grandfather, he took the role of my dad, and honestly, my grandmother was my mother. So we had that super close bond. They loved me, I loved them, and like there was that was the most genuine emotion I felt from any adult at my life ever. I could really tell that they actually cared for me and loved me. My grandfather made me feel like I was his best friend. And then so moving from that with my stepfather and my mom's always just been very distant and complacent. She was never, you could always tell that she was never in the room. She was never mentally there. There's always something going on in her head where she just was sheltered, which allowed my stepfather, because he's a very outgoing, strong personality. So that gave him room to like sweep in and, I'm the man, I'm the husband, I make the money, I control everything. But because of that, he's just been one of appearance. So even if we had nothing, we had to appear that we were the best. We had everything. We were a strong, close knit family. And being that he was so young, he was 19. I mean, he's a kid, and he's a kid raising a kid out. I think I was 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old at the time. So like, I'm not looking at him as he's dad. It's just like, oh, this is a friend of mine or a friend that my mom just happens to live with now. Didn't understand the concept. So I'm used to living free, like with my grandparents, but now all of a sudden he has all these strict rules. You have to do this. You can't do this. This is how you refer to me. This is how life goes. And like I learned quickly, but like that initial breaking in period was pretty rough.
Yeah, kind of almost like coming in and asserting dominance. It's
Yeah.
like I'm letting you know that this is who I am to
Hmm.
some degree. And then, of course, being appearance oriented is a very JW thing. They're all about appearances and how things look to others and how you look inside the congregation. It attracts a lot of and creates a lot of people who are very appearance focused.
Hmm.
So I know we'll get into more of your story, as we go on and how things are going. So how were things at school for you? Was that a haven in any way? Did you go to public school? I mean, everybody's different.
Yeah, I did go to public school. I went to public school all the way up until basically high school. So yeah, around that time, school was, I think it was pretty good. I was naturally an introverted person. So even without the religion, I still always would have been like that quiet kid in the corner. I always made some friends, but never had like a massive friend group. I had maybe like two or three. Um, and so, yeah, we stayed in New Jersey, I believe, up until the beginning of third grade for me. So up until that point, like being a JW never really like affected my school. Um, I would hang out with the kids in class, but I never hung out with them afterwards. But I never really had the desire to. Never stood out. I was always just kind of like a person that flew under the radar. I was there, but you'd forget that I was there. You wouldn't remember who I was. And I kind of always kind of kept that going up, or at least I tried to.
So did you for a lot of JW kids, they stand out because it's Christmas party time, and now you're sent out into the hallway or to the library or something, or just a pledge at the beginning of the day or national anthem or whatever, depending on the school. Like, did you as a introverted kid that kind of wanted to fly under the radar and be invisible, did you have those moments? Did you take those stands, or did you just kind of quietly sit there and nobody really paid attention? Were you that good at being invisible?
That's basically what it was. Like I didn't do the pledge. But I mean, I think if I remember, like my mom kind of like came in and said something. But like I didn't really do the pledge, but nobody ever made like even noticed or cared. And I do think that a couple times, like I would say it in my head because I heard it so much. So I wouldn't necessarily have my hand over my heart and like saying it, but I was kind of already reciting it naturally there. I would always stand up, like I didn't like sit down and be in the back, like looking like I was trying to be detached. Like to a person who walked by, it looked like I was saying the pledge. And the same with like little Easter or Christmas parties. Like I don't remember ever having to leave for those. I never kind of said no. I don't think I always partook in like the cupcakes or whatever, but if somebody offered me one, I'm not gonna say no. I'm a third grade, a second grader. Like, I want a cupcake. I want to eat a fucking cookie.
Of
And
course.
my mom she was more lively at that point in her life, so she would also come by and like bring cookies and cupcakes. So I think that was also kind of her way of, yeah, she wouldn't bring it for her birthday or anything like that, but it was kind of like, well, here I'm still providing cookies and cupcakes for just a random time, so we're not that kind of weird. I think that was her mentality of like, just to make sure that he doesn't stick out as like a weirdo. Like, we're still gonna allow them to have cupcakes and cookies and stuff like that.
So it sounds like she kind of was an aid to some degree in helping you to fly under the radar by providing some of those things.
Hmm.
Or, I can appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of people could have stood to have a mom who wasn't quite as staunch as some of ours were. So
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see where that probably helped you to feel more like you did fit in. Well, like you fit in enough, at least, so that you weren't um, being noticed for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Like at that time, I never, like, my thought never came that I don't fit in with these kids.
Mm.
Um, like, again, I was so young. My home life was starting to change, but it hadn't affected me to the point yet where I was just like, wow, like, why is everything so different? I feel this, and like, I don't feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions. It's still very mild. Like, it's just starting to bubble up.
Gotcha. What about at the Kingdom Hall? Did you try to fly under the radar at the Kingdom Hall as well? Again, I know that there's a story arc here, but I mean, just when you were, in general, were you all the family that was, at all the meetings and expected to do all the things? Were you super busy? Did you study at home and all of that?
Not really. This was the beginning of our spiritual journey because I believe at that time, like my stepfather, he kind of grew up in the church as well. So he kind of had his own things where he was like, I know at one point he was a ministerial servant pretty young. And I think at some like during that period, like he either stepped down or they removed him. I'm not too familiar with that story, but I don't have a whole lot of memories of like going out in service around that time, that young age. I know that we would at least go to most of the meetings, but we weren't so spiritually strong, so to speak, at that point. Like I was just kind of like the warm up period. So like I remember being in the hall around then. It was an older hall. Most of the people there were probably the average age was 40, 50 years old. The only friend that I kind of had was this kid named, well, I guess I won't mention his name, but this like young kid. Um, I remember him because I don't know if this is the right way of saying it. He was a little person,
Hmm,
a midget.
sure.
His dad was one of the anointed. He was a small person as well. And so like, that's what I remember about him was like, he was just this little like thick but small kid.
Mhm.
But like they had money, so he had all the toys that I wanted. That was the initial differentiating factor that I've noticed throughout life was we only had this, whereas all these other people they had all these things that I wish I could have had. So that's what I loved going to his place was he had the toys that I wanted to play with, like a fun little backyard with like trampolines and swings. Um, so I remember doing some of those activities, going out to like the little cookouts that JWs have.
Um, so those were some fun moments. How, did you uh do you remember, as a little kid growing up, did you, especially as one who wanted to be invisible, so to speak, was there pressure on you to, go speak at the doors and, knocking on doors in the ministry or to give talks at the Kingdom Hall or anything yet?
Not at that point. Like when we were in New Jersey, like it was pretty chill. I didn't have a whole lot of pressure. It was when we moved. We moved to Florida about halfway through the school year, the third grade, and so that's when like the big spiritual changes really started to like start being forced upon me.
Okay, so once you guys moved, so I guess let's if you like, we could get into that a little bit. So, you're growing up third grade. See, what was it? I think it was third grade, or was it second grade? It was a long time ago. One or the other is when I remember my family moving. We weren't witnesses yet, but that's a hard thing as a little kid to kind of move in the middle of a year and go to a different school. And you kind of like, as a kid myself who wanted to be invisible, introduced to the class and everything. And
Yeah.
it was just, I still have memories of like walking down the hallway to that new class where I was going to get introduced and just wanting to like crawl in a hole and die. I hated it. So that's tough. That's a real tough thing, even without the witness component.
It was so weird because, like I said, I was introverted, but coming it was at the end of the school year. I think it was a little bit past the halfway point because I think we got there and there was maybe like 2 or 3 months left. My sense of time at that point was a little bit different, but I know it was near the tail end of it. But yeah, like I come in and everybody has their friend groups are already set. They know each other. I'm still trying to learn names while they're like, all they gotta do is remember who I am. And kids, they're weird, judgmental. They got their own little cliques and their people. So like I was just that weird kid. I had the New Jersey style, however we dressed there, and like Florida was completely different. It feels like they're like behind when it comes to certain things. So I was very, very different, even without the JW status. I was just a completely different kid. Um, my primary language growing up was Spanish. So like that period living with my stepdad, moving forward, like I still fought in Spanish, so I had to translate a lot more. So even when I was there, like I was still very heavily influenced with the Spanish. And in Florida, like everybody, they were all just white English speaking people. So that was also a big difference. I was used to being around a lot of Hispanics, and now I'm around a lot of people who only speak English. So it made me adapt even more.
Sure. Just out of curiosity, maybe a side point, but talking about adapting, did your stepdad, ever learn Spanish, or did he just stay English?
He stayed English. He took Spanish in high school, and like he would talk to my grandmother. He's one of those, like I said, he's all into himself. So in his head, he speaks fluent Spanish. He always used to say, "I understand so much more than I speak," which was code for I can't speak Spanish for shit.
Yeah. I was
Like
gonna
he
say,
knows
I
what
could pick out words when someone's
yeah.
speaking Spanish that sound like English, but but I can't speak a lick of Spanish.
He makes it seem like, oh, it's because you guys just speak it so fast. If you spoke it slower, then I'd be able to speak it.
Oh, it's your fault. It's
Yeah.
your fault I can't speak.
Again, the constant theme. It's never him, it's us.
Okay. Understood. Well, all right. I think that's going to play out here to some degree.
Oh yeah.
So you guys moved to Florida, and what's life for you? How does life change, or where were you then and where did you go?
So we moved to a little town called Holiday, Florida. It was not too far from like Clearwater, Tampa Bay. I don't know specifically why we chose that area, but I mean, it wasn't like bad. Again, Florida's all a beach area. So I think that was probably just what was affordable to us, right in like the middle of Florida. The first congregation we went to, that was actually the one that we stayed. I was in that congregation up until I ended up leaving the religion. So it was a pretty good congregation. It was very diverse. So it wasn't like a whole lot of old people. It was a really good mix of older, younger, and like a lot of kids. We always had a lot of kids. I want to say our hall was actually one of the more popular ones because we had like a lot of ex-Bethelites. Most of the elder body was ex-Bethelites. And so they definitely like brought in a lot of like, we always had Bethel speakers. We've had a couple governing body speakers, like give a public talk. The CEO lived at the Kingdom Hall. So like, it was like that was the Kingdom Hall to be at. So that's where we went to. And like, I liked it because I had a lot of friends. I felt really loved and welcomed into it.
That's really interesting. I know when you wrote in telling me a little bit of your story, you mentioned, I believe, that there were a lot of ex-Bethelites, and in my head, you were still up, probably in New Jersey, somewhere around New York, or
Yeah.
something like
Nope.
that. I never, and maybe you said, and I just missed it, but I never ever envisioned that all of these ex-Bethelites were congregating in this small town in Florida. I had no idea. That's interesting.
I think what it is, it's kind of like it's an odd generational, like, what's the term for it? It's like nepotism in a way.
Sure.
So I believe back in like the 80s or something, like there was a couple families, like Jehovah's Witness families, that were like, they've always been really well known in like the whole area, like on the district level. And I think a couple of them went to Bethel, came back, and they all lived in the area. So like as they had kids and they had grandkids, those kids, they all like grew up with that, like, oh yeah, I'm the son of a Bethelite. I'm gonna go to Bethel. I'm gonna be a missionary. One of them went to Gilead. And so like that group started expanding, and then those people went off and came back. So like they grew up in that area, and they just kind of like, whenever they leave, they always end up coming back to that Kingdom Hall specifically. So I think that's kind of how that grew and was born.
So being that was kind of the atmosphere in the Kingdom Hall, in the congregation, did that put a lot of pressure on the other brothers in the congregation to rise to the challenge, so to speak? Like, were all the young brothers kind of under a pressure
Yeah,
to go as well? And probably even just like, I'm sure your stepdad maybe felt a lot of pressure to rise as well.
oh, definitely.
Mm.
Because, and I don't think they chose that hall on purpose. That was just the closest. I think that hall was like, it was within walking distance of where we first moved. So it was just out of convenience. But once they were there, and like obviously they knew about all those things. So once they saw that, I feel like that's where my stepdad's narcissism took place. And it's like, oh, this is where I could grow. Like, these people are popular and well known. This is where I need to be, because that's how I can build up my status, a fresh start. So nobody really knew who he was or who we were. And so there was always a lot of pressure, but it's that fake, like, that we're not pressuring you, but we're so spiritual. And so, if you want to be as spiritual as us, then these are the things that you're going to do. It was never really spoken. It was just kind of the way they carried themselves, you knew that it was expected of you specifically because of the status of the hall.
Yeah, it's like the difference between the doctrines of Jehovah's Witnesses and the culture of Jehovah's Witnesses. There's a lot of things that are unspoken rules.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things that are expectations. And I'm sure in that congregation, there were a lot of things that were unsaid that were definitely expected.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, those things were definitely said in our household. It was definitely forced upon us, but at the Kingdom Hall, it was just like, we know what we're doing, and this is our life. We're doing this is out of our natural love for Jehovah, that this comes easy to us. There's no question that we're not gonna do these things. Of course we are.
Yeah, and if you have somebody who's never been somebody, and they have narcissistic tendencies at a minimum, or are a narcissist, and then they're in this environment where, I always say Jehovah's Witnesses attract narcissists and Jehovah's Witnesses create narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have this opportunity to be somebody. If you just play the game and if you do the things that they want you to do, you can become a person of some importance and stature when maybe you never have been before in your life. And
Yeah.
I could see where that environment could breed that very easily.
And it's such a weird thing, especially thinking about it as somebody outside of it. It's like, he honestly never would have been known for anything outside of the Kingdom Hall Jehovah's Witnesses. He's just a guy. He worked in IT, so you just work on computers. If I have an issue with internet, I'm gonna call you. But like within the Jehovah's Witnesses, like he saw a possibility of like I could be known, I could be adored. Like he may not have said those things, but you could tell. It's like you can build status in the Kingdom Hall, and like you'll be that top dog. And you look at me, I'm so cool and mighty. Everybody knows who I am. I have connections. But on the outside world, it's like, who are you? Fix my computer. I don't care. Just shut the fuck up.
Yes, there was a well-known young brother around here that was a piece of work, but young elder. Everybody looked up to him and his family. They had money, all this stuff, and I remember asking my wife one day. I said, if you took him out of the Kingdom Hall and you put him anywhere else in this world, nobody would care who this guy is at all.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing, like even if he ever saw the truth about the truth and he started to wake up in some way, he's going to have a rude awakening to some degree, because he and his family are kind of, everyone looks up to them. They're these spiritual giants. And of course, he had been to Bethel himself, and that always carries a certain cachet with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody kind of looked to him, and I said, why would he ever leave? He can never leave this and get what he has today. There's no way he can ever achieve that outside. Nobody's going to ever care about him, at least in that way where he's fawned upon, and people really kind of almost deify him in some way. In the world, you're just going to be another guy. I mean, you can still have great friends and stuff and people who respect you for real, but in the Kingdom Hall, he gets to be somebody.
Yeah. And like, I think that's a big reason why at least a lot of people that had that, it's difficult for them to leave. They may even wake up a little bit in their heads or kind of know, but I feel like because they're so used to that type of admiration or that lifestyle, or because that's all they know and that's how they come to put on that fake facade and live that fake life, even if they kind of are aware that it doesn't mean anything anywhere else, like it's hard for them to really pull themselves away from that, because again, you do lose that, and it's a big shock. Because that's kind of, as we get further into the story, that's kind of how my life was, and being pulled away from that, I went from being known to again, who are you? You're just some guy. I don't know who you are. Never met you, and I don't care.
Yeah, it's identity, and then identity loss later. When we leave these things. So how did things go for you guys in this congregation? So you're in this world now where there are all of these Bethelites, ex-Bethelites, whatever, and you're in this new congregation. So how did things begin to go for you all? Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned, or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shunned swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website, or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like exjwhelp.com, that's exjwhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest.
It was just a whole lot of pressure. So a lot of ramping up. That was when I really started actually starting to tell people at school, especially teachers, hey, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I can't pledge the allegiance. I can't take part in, the Easter, Christmas. And then home life, it was 100% just like at that point, I don't think I mentioned it before, but so around second grade when we were in New Jersey, that's when my stepfather at home began his like mental and even physical abuse of me. Like I would do something he deemed out of line. He would take me to my room, take my pants, and beat me with a belt. Like, and he would do that until like I could barely sit. Or one of those, hey, like I would get used to it, and then I wouldn't cry, and he would think that, oh, you think you're strong because you're not crying. Well, I'm gonna make you cry. Or if I did cry, it was one of those, uh, that you have no reason to cry. I'll give you a reason to cry, type of thing. And like that didn't last a whole long time. By the time he moved to Florida, he didn't do the physical, but that's when it went straight up mental, psychological. Um, and so by the time I was in Florida, like I had already been having my brain just like fucked with at home. And so that's when I started seeing the correlation of at home we're this way, but on the outside I have to be this way. And if I do things on the outside that aren't in line, I'll be so severely punished. So let me try and do what I can to minimize it.
I mean, yeah, it's like that Kingdom Hall personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you see a parent who changes, they're yelling and screaming at their kids until they pull into the Kingdom Hall parking lot, and then they get out and they're all happy with their brothers and
Mm-hmm.
sisters and being somebody else. It's really disturbing, just that attitude of you're not crying, so it's not just that I'll give you something to cry about, but it's like this battle of wills where I, as a parent, need to hurt you. I need to break you. I need to make sure that you cry. That is just such an abusive way to go about parenting, and it's just so it's almost like trying to be somebody in your house, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta show you I'm the man of the house here, so I've got to break you down. That is so horrible, and I'm sorry that you went through that, both physically, and then it's obviously the psychology of the gaslighting and then everything else that
Mm-hmm.
starts to come from that on the other side. That's
That
just
was
no way to
always
love
the
your kids.
that was always the theme of growing up and even into adulthood was I am the provider, I pay these bills, this is my home, I am the head of the household. At the end of the day, there's Jehovah and Jesus, and then there's me. Whatever I say is final. And unless it's something that was told to you by Jehovah himself, which obviously he's not real, he's not going to tell you these things. So obviously, whatever he says is the way to go. He is all knowing. Everything, like, that was his thing, is I'm never wrong. I'm always right. Whenever I ask you a question, I already know the answer. So, like, in a way, he had like some type of God complex, I feel like I am the one. I know this, you will never be as wise as me, type of thing.
I was gonna say, it sounds like, I mean, he's kind of mirroring the God that they worship, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like Jehovah owns us, right? And because he sent his son, then he bought us back. He's our owner. We are good for nothing slaves of Jehovah,
Yeah.
according to the interpretation of the witnesses. And then, your dad is basically saying, this is my house, this is my family, I own you, and you're going to do
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I say.
Yep.
Wow. I understand, and I think I know what that looks like a little bit myself.
Yeah.
It's an
Everything was
authoritarian
fear.
regime.
100% ruled by fear. I was at all times terrified. I would tell my mom things because I was always comfortable with her, but I was never comfortable enough to tell him anything. But what shitty was my mom still always told him. And so no matter what, there was never anything to get around because she had that fear of him too. I'm not sure he ever abused her, at least physically, but that mental manipulation was always there for anybody in the house. They would all get it, no matter who they were, what their status within what anything was. So she was afraid of him too because she didn't know what he was gonna do. I really don't understand what was going on in her mind, but yeah, it was just everything was straight fear. Like I would always be punished for everything, and it was never no TV for a week. It was there's no TV for the entire summer vacation. There's whatever you enjoy doing, you're not doing that until I say so. And I would question it, and it would just make it go even longer because it's like, did I say so? No. For matter of fact, I was gonna let you do this today, but instead, you know, it'll probably be for another month. I'll think about it whenever I think about it. Type of
It's it's indicative of the insecurity and the sad, pitiful person that lies within the narcissist, that they
thing.
need to punk kids. Like you need to derive your power from bullying a child.
Yeah, like
You obviously have no self-worth or self-esteem. You have to get it by one-upping a kid. It's really sad.
that's like I don't understand why. It's like I have to rely on you anyway. I'm 10 years old probably at this point. So it's like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go out there and get a job. I'm gonna move out. Like I still have to live with you. Like you still control me in a way. Um, like every parent, it's like I take care of my child, but they have to. If you say, hey, you can't do this, don't break the TV. You gotta listen because you're a kid. But you don't have to take it so far as to like I am God to you type of thing. A kid is gonna listen to you if they love you and they understand that you're just trying to help them. Everything he said was, I'm doing this for your own good. But then it would cause so much pain and hurt that I don't understand how this is for my own good if it makes me feel so bad.
Yeah, it's just for his control and for his good. It fills his cup up to get one over on a kid. And it sounds like maybe some other people as well, but I mean that's kind of the narcissistic way.
Mm-hmm.
And then narcissists create codependence. And so
Yep.
I'm sure your mom, had some of that going on just
Oh
from
yeah.
the relationship there, and you're in a cult of narcissists and codependence in the
Yep.
organization itself. So it just plays out throughout the whole system. Many
Mm-hmm.
of us lived in the greater cult of Jehovah's Witnesses, but also in some sort of family cult as well, or cult of one, even in just a relationship with a narcissist.
Definitely.
Yeah. So then so all this pressure started ratcheting up. What did that result in? So it's pressure from the congregation. How did that impact your family? From your dad to you. And did you have any siblings? I don't know.
Around this time, I had a little sister. She was born, but I want to say she was born. I was 9 years old.
Okay.
So around this point that we're talking about, she's around 2.5 years old. But she was, that was his child, so he was a lot more like I was the outside of the family. I'm the one that took the brunt of everything. My little sister was the angel, the little princess.
Yeah. Just the fact that you're not biologically his,
Yeah.
he may have felt threatened by as well.
Which again, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's provable stories with my dad and interactions with my dad and my stepdad. I'm sure that also plays a big factor in the way that he looked at me as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, carry on. Where would you like to go from 9-year-old Kevin?
Yeah, so I get at this point it was my two lives started to be I think this was the creation of my two lives, even if I wasn't aware of it. My home life, terrible, miserable, and there was never any glimmer of hope, so to speak, except for I have to do well in the church. Like these are things that I learned as I got older about how to avoid certain things. But at that point, my home life was just adapt, get used to it. This is what my life is. There was no like, I wasn't aware of how things should have been or how they could have been. It was just, this is my everyday. This is what I have to do. I just got to go with it. And then in the witness side, that's what we were just starting to rise, become well known. He's very outgoing, so he's putting himself out there in front of the elders. He's giving beautiful, incredible talks, like giving the theocratic ministry school number 4 talks, Bible readings. He's out there showing himself to the point where eventually he pretty quickly he got appointed a ministerial servant. And he's forcing my mom and me, we have to comment. At that point, I'm also in the theocratic ministry school, so I'm giving number 1 like Bible readings. I'm having really good comments that he basically makes me write out, or he writes out for me. Like, we are the shining example of a new family. We are studying, we're active, we comment, we go out in service every week, every Sunday. He's doing everything he can to make as much money as he could, starting his own business, because he wants to keep up with the Joneses. Our Kingdom Hall is relatively well off. A lot of brothers had their own companies, so they had the newer cars, they had nice suits, tailored. Everything looked and was, top of the line, everybody. So he's working his ass off to prove to the congregation that he's one of them. And so that's how we were in the Kingdom Hall. This was basically our whole life. It just kept on growing bigger and bigger with this fantasy that he had of us. And he was going to do anything in his power to make that a reality.
So, what was it? So, the way you described your stepdad, very charismatic, a person who it sounded like at the Kingdom Hall he could put on a personality and do what he needed to do on the platform and with the elders and such. Was it hard for you as a kid to watch that?
Not really, just because that's how he was.
So it was just normal to you. So just
I didn't know.
dad's
Yeah,
doing dad.
I didn't know any different. So that was just, in a way, this was how you're supposed to be. And I didn't think that things could be different. Growing as a teenager and older, I realized it, but at that time, my view of the world is based off of how he forced me to view the world. So I couldn't ever imagine that things that he's doing these 2 different things. It was just, when you're in front of people, you have to be one way because that's how life is. You be one way. And when you're at home, you have to be different. And that's just how I thought living a life had to be. There was no, well, my friend is doing this, and so maybe there's something different. Maybe I am being abused, or maybe he's this way. No, that's just what a grown man is. This is what a kid has to do. You speak unless you're spoken to. You have to follow everything because he's dad. And I had to call him dad. I could never call him David or stepdad. He had to be dad. Everybody had to look at him. Nobody in the Kingdom Hall knew that he was my stepfather until I was older and I mentioned it. He was dad or daddy, whatever it is. We are a cohesive, natural family unit. This is how we've always been, and we're only going to get better.
Okay. So you were getting roped into giving talks and things as well. So was this the start of you no longer being invisible? Were you being kind of forced to be visible?
Yeah. And at that point, like I said, I didn't have any reason to not believe that this was the truth or not. So I did believe. I 100% was, this is my life. This is the truth. We are the only ones that have the truth, and the world around me is going to be destroyed. I should be an example. I have to show everybody in school. And it was so cringy. I remember for a science project in 4th or 5th grade, we have to make a little diorama or something like that. And at that point I forgot what it was. We went on I forgot what they call it, but the congregation at times, you can apply to go to a rural area to preach. So for us, Alabama, there was Hamilton, Alabama, this middle of nowhere redneck town. and we could apply. And so like us and like a group of like 10 people, we drove all the way to Alabama and spent like 2 weeks there preaching and talking to people who've never heard about Jehovah's Witnesses before. And so when I got back, one of my class project, this was just after summer break. And so they wanted us to like have a little project on, what was something that you like stood out to you. And like, I just remember being up there like with a couple tracks and like having pictures of us preaching. And I'm just sitting there like super excited. Like I remember the teacher didn't have time for everybody to bring it up. So I was like raising my hand, like my turn. Didn't get called that day. So I remember like I made a point to let her know like I have to share this because I have to preach to the class and show them this is who I am. And like a week later, after like everybody already gave their stuff, nobody cared at that point. She called me up basically kind of almost begrudgingly. She was like, fine, go up and share everybody. You have 2 minutes. And I was just sitting there showing this diorama and like kind of giving everybody tracks about just whatever. I don't know if it's tracks or magazines, but just like so excitedly sharing this. And meanwhile, like I didn't know how to interact with kids outside of that. They were, talking about the latest games and movies, and I didn't know. I watched TV shows when I could, and I had my own little like things, but like I didn't know what I was out of the loop. I was weird. Like I had a little transformer toy, and I had a little like shooting, like you could like there's a little plastic like thing that would shoot out of like imitate a gun, and I like shoot them at the kids and like just do weird shit. And everybody just avoided me because I didn't know how to be a normal kid around these people. I was like a little weirdo. And so I was just kind of like always by myself in my little head. Never fit in with anybody. But like I did these things because I felt like this is what I have to do. This is how I can make my stepdad happy. And this is how I can make Jehovah happy and the congregation happy.
Yeah, it's always about making somebody else happy, isn't it? Those were the goals. So, so where does your life go from there?
Just progressing that. So I believe like in my Kingdom Hall, I started really like our family was already at that point ingrained. We were always like doing what we had to do in front of everybody. People loved us. My stepfather was getting in well with everybody, doing super well preaching. For me, like there was a lot of young people in our Kingdom Hall, and they started moving in more and more. So I was making really good friends with this other dude. Like I made friends with this one kid because his first name was Kevin, and everybody was like, "Oh, Kevin and Kevin, blah blah blah," like just making something out of nothing. But that forced me to become friends with him, and then that's the beginning of me. Years later, my therapist said that I'm a chameleon. That's how my personality is. So that's honestly the beginning of me being that chameleon. Because I don't give a fuck about football. I don't care about stats. But he was from Wisconsin and so was his dad. They were into football heavily. And I wanted to hang out with him because I didn't have any other like friends. So I got into football. I got into, like I would research on statistics like, oh, back in 2014, Brett Favre had 3,000 throwing yards and he did this and that. So that's when I started becoming like, not myself. I would force myself to enjoy it to the point where it felt genuine because that's what he did. And it also was in a weird way, me running away. I could spend more time at his house. I could have a sleepover with him. That was one less night that I had to be under my stepdad's roof. I was not going to be punished at his house. So like he had no hold of me there.
Well, I mean, you said something. So you were a chameleon. Of course you were, because you didn't know who you were. Mm-hmm. None of us had our own identities. We weren't allowed to really form them. So we got our identities from the people around us. It's something that, comes up. One of the things I work with people on in my coaching practice is trying to figure out who they are. And that's because, identity was really provided for us.
Yeah.
And we were kind of expected to, what was this scripture? Like, I don't know, to the Jew, Paul became like the Jews, to the Greek, Paul became like the Greeks, or whatever. Some of that stuff slipping from my head now, and I'm okay with that. But he became all things to all people, or whatever. And that's really kind of what we were taught, to be whoever we needed to be to fit in wherever we needed to fit in, instead of, oh, well, here's who I am, and here's kind of my tribe or my people that I enjoy being with. Not that there's anything, I mean, we should try to get along with everybody if we can, but it's not surprising to me that you would find yourself in that position, right? And the benefit, the payoff being, I get to be out of the house. Yep. Like I remember from the time I got a job at 16 on, I was gone every day as soon as I got a car, because I didn't want to be at home. So I totally understand. And now, how old were you when you started making this friend and you were able to start getting away? Because that had to be a big deal.
I want to say I was probably 11 or 12. I think more like 11. Because he moved in the hall around that time. And like we were like such weird people. Like we would always volunteer to clean, but it was always the bathrooms, because everybody would be out there vacuuming. That was boring. But like in the bathrooms, like we would both volunteer, so nobody else would want to go in there and help us clean. Those two guys got it. So we would always just spend like 30 minutes in the bathroom cleaning, just fucking like throwing little wads of toilet paper at each other, goofing around. Like we had our own little inside jokes. Or like during the meeting, sometimes like we would both conveniently have to use the bathroom at the same time. Or like also I remember like in between songs, they would always want people to like just go in the bathroom and like kind of wipe it down a little bit, make sure it was clean before the next thing. Like they just don't want it to let go. So we would go in together and do that. And we would spend a lot longer than we should have in there. But if anybody asked, like we have to make sure it was perfectly immaculate, because we would clean it really well, like really fast. So like that was kind of like we were starting to like, I was starting to grow as a person and kind of figure out what we enjoyed, but not really. Like it was always still what somebody else enjoyed, and I kind of made that my own. I didn't necessarily, I don't think like that's who I would be and enjoy things, but that was, again, like I was able to get away from my seat and like do things, and it looked like I was doing important things for the Kingdom Hall and Jehovah. So of course I had to do this. I enjoyed that aspect of it. And again, like at home, my stepdad would make me memorize Bible scriptures. Like I had a Bible scripture every week that I had to fully memorize. And then like he would always quiz me, like, what's John 3:16 say? Matthew 24:14, Revelation 21 verse 3 and 4, like, all the big ones. And then just like Psalms 83:18, like all these different ones that he would like quiz me over time. And then he would just throw in random ones, like what's Daniel, whatever, I think it was Daniel 2:44 or something like that.
Yep.
Like he would just throw in these other ones, and just like I had to have this repertoire of like 30 or 40 scriptures that I could call up at a moment's notice. My watchtower had to be studied immaculately, like different colors, notes here and there, comments, and they had to seem like I just came up with them on the spot. And I had to comment at least twice per per watchtower study, or like at a minimum, like there was always a minimum of what I had to do. I just thought like that's how you teach kids. Yeah.
I was like, most people had once. You had twice. Your dad's like, I'm gonna be an elder.
That's 100% what it was.
Yep.
You have to, the family has to be an elder's family. My mom, elder wife, I have to be an elder's kid. That's how it was.
And what was the punishment if you did not comment? Or, I mean, you can't always control if they call on you or not.
At the very least, my hand had to be up. Like, I had to raise my hand like 10 times throughout the meeting to let them know, like, I'm trying to get, called on for a comment. And, sometimes I wouldn't for the whole meeting, I wouldn't give a comment, but I had to show that I was really trying to get a comment. And punishments, they just always varied. Like, he had this thing, it was so stupid, but like, he would always clear his throat. And whenever he did that, you knew that there was something that you were doing that you needed to correct. Like, if you were just kind of like not paying attention, because at that point he was like part of the sound department, literature department, running microphones. So he was always in a position where he could see where any of us were doing. We always sat in the same spot all the time, like in the middle, maybe a little bit closer to the front. He always had to have the aisle seat so he can get up and get out whenever he needed. But it was also always a point where he could have vantage on us at all times. And so wherever he was, like, he would just clear his throat and immediately you would just stop and like freeze and just reset everything, because you don't know what it is you were doing wrong, but something was wrong. You didn't answer, you didn't rate, so you just stop, pay attention, and you would just do everything 100% to the best of your ability, just in case whatever it is wasn't right, like you correct it right then and there.
Any wonder so many of us develop maladaptive coping skills like perfectionism, because if I can be perfect and never make any even perceived mistake, then perhaps I won't get in trouble. And your stepdad there is really, he's ever present, this looming figure who's watching over you guys. And I mean, you have to try to never make a mistake, never do anything that could even be perceived somehow as erroneous or whatever the case may be, because he's gonna be right there to point it out. And even if there wasn't anything, I'm sure he could come up with something.
That's exactly what it was.
Your
there
attitude
was nothing
or something, right?
there was something. And it was always like, I love the fact, because we were that family that stayed there to the end of the meeting, like until almost the last person. He had the key to the kingdom hall, so he was always willing to close and lock up after everything. And so I really enjoyed the aspect of that, because again, that was an extra 45 minutes that we were there, that he was doing something, because I knew the moment we got into the car to drive back home, he was just going to berate me. He was going to tell me everything that I did wrong, everything that I should have done better, every reason why I was an embarrassment to him and the family, every reason why I'm never going to be good enough to do anything because of the way that I'm acting. And it was just like always a really hard way to drive home. And I would get home and it was just, I was just empty at that point. I would go to sleep just always knowing that I could never be the right thing. And that was just really hard for me.
Sure, man. The common refrain of the exjw is, I could never be good enough.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, I couldn't be good enough for Jehovah, for the congregation. I couldn't be good enough for mom or dad or whoever. It's always, no matter what you do, it's never enough.
And like, I haven't thought about that in a while. Like, I didn't think I'd get teary-eyed for something like that, but
it hurts.
It's like those emotions always have stuck with me even to this day.
Well, sure. We all, I mean, what's the only thing that a kid, I mean, as a kid, you want to make your parents proud, right? No matter, I mean, even if they're treating you horribly, you want to make them proud. And most of us were trying very hard to get praise from people who their business was not giving praise. That was their product that they sold, was the absence of praise. Blame was usually their currency. And it is psychologically damaging, and it hurts to grow up knowing that you will never make them proud. You'll never be right. I mean, occasionally you might do a little something, but even then it's like, it's short-lived.
But that was like because of that, that was always my goal.
Yeah.
Was I'm going to live a life that's going to make you proud. I'm going to force proudness upon you. I will find whatever means necessary. I don't care how long it takes. I mean, obviously, I prefer sooner than later, but um, at the end of the day, like I'm going to find reasons to make you proud because I knew that one that wouldn't bring any pain. I could find momentary happiness in knowing that I did something good in your eyes and you acknowledge it. Like that would give me brief moments of happiness. I didn't feel happy ever. I never had true happiness except for when I lived with my grandparents. I was able to go visit them every summer, but I misbehaved one time. I think it was like they called it a referral. So it's like you got in trouble in school for not doing something. And like, that was kind of like a bad punishment. So I got that once and I wasn't able to go back to New Jersey again to spend summer vacation with my grandparents. So the one source of actual genuine happiness was taken from me. And so honestly, the only way I found the closest thing to genuine happiness was good job. You made me proud, or, you did something good. I like that you did this. Because I knew that the rest of the day or that rest of that night, he wasn't going to get on my ass for anything. I made him feel good. Now my reward was him kind of just leaving me alone. And that brought me peace.
And so many of us have grown up in an environment that taught us that happiness is really just the relief or absence of pain.
Yeah.
That's, that happiness is not really self-actualizing and finding the things that truly bring us joy. It's more just the absence of pain from another person who treats us badly, or the absence of pain from a situation. Relief has been confused for happiness for many of us because that's all that was the best we could get, was, hey, at least today dad's not going to yell at me.
Yep.
And so it feels like the best day ever, right? It does sound like you had some genuine happiness with your grandparents. It sounds like you really kind of bonded with them, and they bonded with you, and that does sound like happiness.
They never got on my ass for anything. Like the summer vacations that I spent with them were the best because you get that relief, but like they weren't like the most spiritual. Like they went to the congregation. Like my grandmother, I feel like she was just in it because that was her friends. That was her group. Those are her people. She didn't really have a need to go out anywhere anyway to make other worldly friends because she had a lot of health problems like diabetes and um like she had a couple heart attacks. She's had 3 heart attacks, I believe. So she didn't really have a reason to go out. She also had that sympathy. She couldn't go out door to door all the time. My grandfather was more zealous, but he just exaggerates and he's just goofy. He's funny. He's outgoing and a wild guy. But like he never had the need to be a ministerial servant. He was at one point, but he stepped down to help with my grandmother's health care. But like they were just content. They had what they needed. And that was all that they needed. So when I was there was no judgment. There was just like, I love you. You're my grandkid. You're the best. Whenever my grandfather had a little big fish tank. So I would ask him like, oh, let's go to Kmart. That was our store, Kmart. I don't know why I love going to Kmart.
Blue light specials.
Yeah, we would go to Bradley's or Kmart and like we would just get like if I wanted this toy, like he would, and I loved it. I had freedom. I always had to, if we went anywhere, I had to be with my stepfather at all times. We go to the store, I'm right next to him. Whereas like with my grandfather, like he would do his shopping around Kmart. I would just hang out in the toy store or the toy area. And I would just like find that one toy that I loved. And then I didn't have to force my grandfather. Like I was just, that kid thing, like, oh, I would love if I got this. This would be so fun. I love this. This is the one toy that I really want. And he would get it for me. I was just like, he didn't care what it was. Like he would give it to me. Even if it was something like, oh, that's, it's Scooby-Doo, that has ghosts and whatever. And I'm like, I know, but like, I just really want this. And he's like, okay, just be aware that this could be something bad. But he also knew my stepfather. And so I think they were also always extra kind because he knew the pain that I had from them. And that was like the best thing ever, was just that genuine love and happiness. And like I found out later in my teenage years, like my mom hated because my grandfather was my mom's stepfather. She did not like him. She hated him. She tolerated him because of my grandmother. Everybody loved my grandmother. And everybody knew that I was like the one. Like I was her favorite. I was her first grandkid, but like I was the one that she raved about. And so we had, again, that super special connection that nobody else in the family had. That was like my one prized possession. And so like that was the greatest thing ever. Up until unfortunately she passed. I was 15 when she had her final heart attack, and she was like on permanent dialysis after that because her diabetes got real bad. And then it like got worsened to the point where like she would have to permanently be hooked up to a machine in the hospital to continue life. And so like that was basically like her final days. Like she chose to get off the machine so that way she could just, rest instead of having to go through all that.
That's tough. Did so. I mean, I understand that my dad was on dialysis, and eventually he too chose to stop going through the process because it damaged his heart, and that's part of it. So I'm sorry that's what happened. I'm so happy though that you had these two influences in your life, your grandparents, that it seemed like gave you a genuine view of what relationships could be, at least something to bounce that your home life off of. And so when your grandmother passed, did you all get to go see her, or I mean, were you all there for any of that?
No. Again, that was one of my punishments. I kind of always, it's one of those things where like I often find myself up until just recent times, like finally being honest with everything. But one of the things that I kind of always do is I kind of tell white lies about certain things just to make decisions not seem as bad, or my life was as bad or different as it was. One of the things I've always said was my family gave me a choice to go visit her in her final days before she passed. And I kind of just decided I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to see her in that pain. But the reality was, like, obviously my mom went because that's her mom. She was close to her. All that side of the family went there. I don't know why my stepdad didn't end up going, because he always made a big deal like he loved her, but they weren't as close as he said they were. But I wasn't allowed to go to see her in the hospital, and I wasn't able to like attend because the funeral was that same week, and I wasn't able to go see her for the funeral either. I was forced to stay with him that week. And I never, like, in that moment, I wasn't sad because I didn't know I needed to be sad. I was told that it was for my own protection because I didn't need to see my mother or my grandmother in such a vulnerable way, or, see her in such a bad way. I didn't need to suffer that way. But like looking back on it, that's one of the biggest regrets of my life, is not being able to, because I also know that of all the people that my grandmother, and like I know she wouldn't have wanted me to see her in that way, but I also know that she wanted to see me before she ended up, passing away.
Sure.
I was one of the closest people to her. She was the closest person I ever had. And that was taken away from me because I was not allowed to because of a punishment that I don't even know what it was. Like, that's the thing. Most of my life, I didn't know what I was doing that made him so upset. There was never a reason other than some made up reason that he came up with on the spot. I don't know why I was punished and not able to see her. And like after that, that made everything like that was the beginning of my emotional problems. I wasn't able to see my grandfather ever again after that until I moved out and I was an adult. They knew how close I was to him, but again, that was a punishment to me. Everything was always a punishment. And that was the first real emotionally fucked up punishment that I got.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's incredibly fucked up to keep somebody from a person. Was this because, oh no, you said you don't know why, because I know you mentioned a referral earlier. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry that happened to you. It's I mean, it's understandable that sometimes we all, may be prone to make up little white lies, as you said, because sometimes it's just easier to do that than to get into the, like, how do you, it's hard. It feels hard to explain that to other people, and and we already carry so much pain about it. Sometimes we don't want to see that it impacts other people too when they hear it. But I'm glad that you shared it, because it's a very vulnerable thing to do. And I mean, I think that there's other people out there too who have gone through, who probably had people do similar things. This is just, it's that gaslighting. It's that you never know what you did wrong. And then there are these punishments that are so much bigger than the crime.
Exactly.
Just to try to make you feel like nothing.
It's like going to prison for life because I stole a candy bar from the store. Like, that's how, like, the magnitude of difference between the crime and the punishment is.
Yeah.
And like, I know around that time is when I really started like hiding, like, cause that's when you start as a kid, like as a teenager, you start learning about yourself and like wanting to explore. That's when I started lying about a lot of me and the choices that I'm trying to make compared to what he wants me to do. And like, he was so controlling. He needed me to say everything to him at any given moment, whatever I was doing, whoever I was with, and what I did with them, how long it was, like down to the specific T of anything. Like, I went out, I slept over with my friend, and in the morning we went to service. I had to let him know that. I had to call him. Like, he gave me a cell phone, but it wasn't like because, I could call friends and text them and have fun. It was for every little thing that I did that he needed to know, I had to reach out. After service, we went to his house. We were there for 2 hours. I got to text you or call you. And then after that, we went to this restaurant. I had to text you and call you. I had to be home by 9 o'clock if I didn't let him know at 8:30 that I was on my way. Like, and like everything was down to a specific thing. And any break of that regularity immediately, I know that there was something coming. And like, it got to the point later in life where I knew what I was doing. I just stopped because I didn't care. I got so used to it that I was empty. I was just done. I knew what was going to happen. And I would just in my head be in my own world while he was berating me and going on about this. Like, it was just, I was so controlled by this narcissism that I was just tired.
Sure. Sounds relentless. And I mean, doesn't it sound like, you may hear in an example of domestic abuse, you have a partner, maybe the husband is tracking all of his wife's movements and needs her to check in everywhere she goes. And that's if he's not right there with her at all times. And I mean, it just sounds like that level of control and trying to dominate another person. again, it's part of the narcissism. And now you had kind of alluded to a few times, but it sounds like, for you, you did start at some point having a quote double life, this secondary life, which is what you probably is really would have as your primary if you could, but you can't. And so you're starting to maybe explore other areas of life. I don't know what ages we're talking about, at this time, but I'm guessing it's somewhere in here you were baptized as well. And so I don't know how that plays in to where you were.
So I was baptized, I believe I was 12. I got baptized at the Circuit Assembly. And I guess what kind of was special about that in a way was the presiding overseer of our Kingdom Hall was this like young, hip, ex-Bethelite. And so like his family he was a part of the family where like the generations were like all witnesses, went to Bethel, came back. So he was the PO of our Kingdom Hall. His daughter was getting baptized that day. So it was like, wow, look at these super like prominent young people. They're both getting baptized at the same time. You know how they go out to dinner afterwards? Like they invited us, this prominent family, and like the rest of their people, they were all going to this fancy restaurant. And so they invited us to be part of that group. Like it was just like her and I got to like be part of this super special thing. And so that was one of the beginnings of like, wow, this family is like really something, because they're doing this thing along with them. They're matching up, and like their kids are like, they're the perfect example of what JW kids should be.
Wow. Do you remember what led up to you being baptized? Was there anything that did you feel looking back like it was I want to say your choice, but that's not accurate because it's all and so it's really kind of coercive. But I mean, did your dad put a lot of pressure on you to do that, or why then? I guess, was there any impetus for it?
I mean, I guess I don't remember him giving me specifically any pressure. It wasn't like you need to. Why aren't you baptized? You need to. It was one of those like, I guess like the congregational pressure. Like nobody specifically says out of their way like, why aren't you baptized? You have to. Maybe later in life if you're like 20 and haven't been baptized, but at that point, because we were still so young, it wasn't like they looked at you like really positively if you got baptized when you were young, because it's like, wow, this person from a young age, he knows that this is the truth and he needs to dedicate his life. Yeah, like he's doing really good. He's super spiritual. And so at that point, I think I was an unbaptized publisher for like 3 years. And so I just decided like, hey, I want to get baptized. And he was like, are you sure? Like, yeah. So I forgot the name of the book, but like a little green book, I think it was, where like it has like the baptism questions.
OM book, the Organized to Accomplish Our Ministry.
Something like that.
I can't remember what color it was.
I
thought
think
it was like some sort of weird deep purple or something, but I may be wrong.
I know for me, I know for a fact it was like a dark green, like a forest green.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, like I remember he got me that book, and like I had to study all the questions, but like I had to meet with the elders like 3 different times. Like this elder went over one section, this one went over the other, and then this one went. And then after that, they're like, okay, well, during the next circuit assembly, you're gonna get baptized. And like I was feeling so great, because I remember coming back, like they got the announcements, like, the circuit overseer, like they give you a summary, and then at the end of it, they're like, and we would like to introduce 3 new publishers, this person, that person, and Cooper. They were, let's welcome them. And like you felt so special because now the attention was on you because you did something really good. And like my stepdad was happy with that. And so like that was like like around that time was the beginning of my Kingdom Hall life and then my worldly life, because even though at that time I knew that it was the truth, I felt like it was, but like at that point I was in middle school, and I didn't tell anybody that I was a JW because I would see how weird I would be. I didn't want to be weird in school anymore. So I would curse. I had like different clothes. I was like wearing baggy clothes. So like I'd be prim and proper when I got dropped off. But then like I would put like the style of what was cool with the kids for my backpack. And like I would try and talk the talk. I hung out with the skater kids and the popular kids because they were like kind of close together. And so like I would date girls. Well, one girl, I didn't know what dating was. Like I was so vanilla. Like I had the girlfriend for 2 weeks because her friend asked her out for her. And like I remember she kissed me on the cheek and I was like, it felt like I lost my virginity. But like I didn't know like about holding hands or like kissing or any of that. Like I wasn't aware that that's what you do and that's what kids were doing then. I think I had just gotten introduced to pornography because a friend gave me like a ripped out page of a Playboy that I kept like folded up in like the shoe, like underneath the sole of the shoe. Because my stepdad, like he checked my room all the time. It was like I would come home and like all of my clothes would be on the floor. My bed would be disheveled because I didn't fold my laundry. I had to be perfectly in my dresser. And so if I didn't fold like some underwear, everything was torn out and I had to do it from scratch. So like he would always go through everything, check under the bed. There was no way I could hide things. It was really difficult. I had stolen like some adult magazine from I don't know why my barber had this, but like the barber that we had it like on the table. It wasn't like nudes, but it was damn near close. But like I stole it and I put that under my bed and he questioned me. I saw a really good article that I wanted to read. Which around that time I guess that's when he found out that I was masturbating. Which I had to get that talk. Because I didn't know that you'd have to go to the elders and talk to them about that if that came about. I think he told me that if I found out about this again, then I have to go to the elders and let them know. So I was really good at hiding it. I didn't stop, but I was just really good at hiding it. But yeah, like that around that time was, in school, I was cursing and doing this and like being one way and talking the talk with them. But then at home, I'm that highly spiritual kid. I'm the one that's like doing things. And I felt so guilty because I knew that I was abandoning Jehovah when I was at school and I was not getting his Holy Spirit there. But like when I was at home, like I would pray for forgiveness and I would like pray to the point where I was crying because I knew that I wasn't doing the right things and I would pray for the strength to do it, but I couldn't control myself.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us were shamed for masturbating or for doing normal things, for maybe saying some words that we weren't supposed to say and somebody caught that, or just whatever the case may be. I mean, it's just like the next level of it's like not only is your dad watching your every move, but Jehovah's
and all the
watching
angels.
your every move too.
Like legions and legions of angels are all staring at me while I'm sitting there beating my knee, and they're all just watching me from heaven, which is, looking back, that's creepy as hell. But
isn't it?
I can't imagine billions and billions of angels just watching every single little thing that I do. That's just quite an odd thing. I feel sorry for them if they were, because I did a lot of dumb, weird things.
How voyeuristic of the angels,
right?
That's I think they're into their own thing. It's just
I guess so.
It's all very weird. It's all a very, very strange concept that results in a lot of repression, and then that repression leads to a lot of either being shut down or maybe being hypersexual, and there's just a lot of things that come from that. But again, it's just the shaming of things that are oftentimes part of normal adolescent developments.
That's Satan right there.
Was that?
I said that's Satan right there.
Oh,
That's either Satan or one of the devils. You know,
yes,
he's
yes,
lurking after that lion, seeking to
yes,
devour.
yes. Uh, so, I mean, obviously, that's going to cause you to have a little bit, these two lives, and it sounds like you were a sincere kid, and you did feel shame for it, for having these two lives. You said in tears and prayer at times. Um, so how did you reconcile that, or did you just continue on doing what you did, as a weak, fleshly human being? And did you, did it, I don't know, like, are we talking like 16, something like that, 14, 16, whatever?
So
Like, how's your life going into teenagerhood?
so this was at the end of middle school, and
Okay.
basically at that point, like I was not giving a choice. I was thrown into homeschool. So I was like an online virtual school. Um, and my stepdad at the time, like he owned his own business, so he would be able to work from home. He would like go to client's house, fix up the computers, come back, fix them, and then go back. So he was gonna be always at home. My mom, she was like a secretary for I don't know what. So he was always gonna be able to watch me, take care of me. And so I was homeschooled, and that allowed me to finish. Like, I do appreciate the fact that I was able to finish school a lot earlier. I think it took me like 3 years to finish high school. So I finished at like 17. Um, but yeah, I was basically forcibly removed from that. So I didn't really have the chance to be as double life as possible. Like, I would still, at that point, I would like read comics on the computer when I was supposed to be doing school. I would listen to rap music. I love rap music. I listen to rap music with profanity. And like I would curse under my breath. I was like that kind of bad boy. Or like I would go to the library all the time and get books. And they thought it was just like sci-fi stuff, but like some of them had magic and fairies. So those are like my little weird double life things. But I didn't feel as bad because it's just entertainment, and I'm not allowing the devil to control me. I still go to the Kingdom Hall and I'm super spiritual. Um, and also I had my best friend at that time. So there's this new family that moved in, and it was the arrangement of their family was like ours. So they had a younger daughter that was like good friends with my sister. They had a teenage kid that he was, I think he's a year younger than me, like 9 months younger than me. But they moved in, and they were like the new flowery, happy, outgoing. Like they would have people come over their house all the time. They had the money, so they came into it with what my family worked hard to get to. And so there's a big reason why my stepdad did not like them, and by automatic, my mom did not like them, because they were naturally what they were faking being. And like they were very genuine about it. But yeah, so Ethan, that was my best friend. To this day, he's my best friend out of everything. He was honestly the biggest reason why I am sane and alive, because we clicked so like immediately, and everything we did together, we pioneered together, went to pioneer school together, and like our adult lives, we went to school together. He was homeschooled as well, so we had a lot of flexibility of being able to like hang out, and it all stemmed from spiritual stuff. Every Saturday, okay, or we're gonna go to field service together, and then at the end of field service, we would be like, hey, just bring your clothes to my, in the service, so that way afterwards you can come to my house and we'll hang out. And then that turned into like during summer vacation, I'm gonna just live with, like, spend 4 days sleeping over with you, or 5 days. And like I love that because I was not under my stepdad's purview the whole time. We got to play games, and like we were able to be kids, teenage kids,
Yeah.
listen to music, play guitar, have fun, hang out with, like, he had some other friends that were from a different hall. So we got to hang out with them and like just have the greatest time, at least to me. So I wasn't necessarily living a double life at that point, but I had that release of pressure and stress.
Well, I'm glad Ethan was around. It sounds like you definitely needed that. And I mean, maybe he
100%.
did too. That's his story. But I'm glad that he was there to help keep you sane, because we all needed a at least some time, if we could get it, to be a kid for a
Yeah.
minute and to just have some fun.
And I think a big reason why, I mean, like I said, his parents were super awesome and genuine. They were really kind, but I think that they could tell, because I spent so much time with their son, and based off of my hesitantness of like certain things, like they would go to a friend's house, just because they got invited for dinner. They're super social, but like I would be like, oh, I gotta call my dad real quick to see if I'm allowed to do that. If not, you might have to drop me off at the house. And like that was kind of like they would see the control. And I think that's also another reason why my parents didn't like them, because they knew that they're kind of seeing the negative effects of what they're doing, because they're the opposite. I was actually jealous of Ethan because his parents were loving and kind and they would talk to him. They were not controlling. They would help him and inspire him to do the things that he was supposed to do as a good Christian. Whereas I was forced, and I saw that difference. And I acted in that way too, and they could tell. And so I think that's a big reason why they also took to me a little bit more, at least the parents did. They would be more willing to bring me into their life and hang out with them and be part of their household.
Hmm. Did your parents like you being around anybody? Did your parents have friends? Did they, yeah, were they very social? Because sometimes, a situation like this can result in a lot of isolation,
Mm-hmm.
knowingly or unknowingly. People that are very controlling sometimes end up isolating themselves. And so I was just wondering, like, did they have much of a social life? Did you all?
Yeah, actually, because again, he was outgoing and very into being like popular. So um, he, I remember growing up, we did have there was at the minimum there's two families that we're really really close to, and we would always like at least every weekend we'd be at one of their houses or they'd be at ours. um, so they're definitely really outgoing, and even sometimes during the week. We were actually part of because this was at the time where we had Bible studies at people's houses. I think near the end they kind of got rid of that and we had to do family worship. But so they had the Bible study at their house, and so we would always like it was like a hangout session. We'd have an hour worth of Bible studies. Everybody would leave, and we would like sit there and order Taco Bell and just kind of bullshit for like an hour. We would watch movies sometimes, and so there was three families that we were really close to, and that we would all hang out and do stuff together. Like we would even do vacations together, which were like life was monotonous because he was very same thing. He preferred the same meals. Every time we went out, we'd like to go to Chili's or Applebee's after the meeting, and same pasta, same appetizer, same dessert. We'd go to Orlando for vacation every year, do the same things. Um, and so whenever we go on like a vacation with them, still the same thing. We go to Orlando, do the same things, but like at least now there's somebody else that he had focus on. It was great because now in front of them, he's not gonna act how he would be at home. And so like he was actually a loving, like an actual loving father, a loving husband. He was took the lead in the right way possible. Everything was amazing. So I did love that. That friend group was different than like me because they didn't have kids my age. But I was always kind of in the background, quiet, but I liked it. I appreciated that.
Interesting how the narcissist knows how to behave when they need to, and can flip that switch, and then suddenly they change behind closed doors. Um, so you guys, you've got this friend Ethan. You're in high school now, homeschooled, or well, I guess you blew through homeschool pretty quickly. Saved yourself a year there. So as you're kind of going through these later teenage years, what'd you want to do? Around that time, people tend to get maybe a job or a car, or your average person might be thinking about college or something. What was it like for you?
Well, my life was still always controlled. So my goals and aspirations were what they needed to be based off of what others wanted. So I wanted, but I didn't, I told myself to talk myself out of it. College is not a thing. Maybe an associate's degree, that's community college. Jehovah's Witnesses are okay with that, at least in our area, or a trade. Everybody wash windows, or every brother had either a construction company or a painting company. Painting was popular. But so the one family we were super close to, that brother, him and another brother, they both owned a painting company. So that was basically my first job. It's something that basically gave me the freedom to make money, but also become a Bethelite, or save money to pioneer and do that kind of stuff. Basically, whatever allowed me to be the most spiritual. So yeah, around that time, I didn't get my first job until I believe I was 18. I wasn't allowed to before that. I had to rely on everybody there, which also kind of sucked going out in service. We take breaks. I was so fortunate. Our congregation was super into we go to Panera or Starbucks, and they'd always say spend no more than 10 minutes, but we'd be there for an hour, hour and a half. But yeah, my friends, Ethan and his family, tended to buy my stuff because my stepdad would give me a PayPal card with $10, and that would be my thing for the whole month. So I couldn't afford anything unless he specifically bought it or somebody else took care of it for me.
Yeah, financial control. Okay. So you weren't even allowed to make your own money, it sounds. So where do you go from 18 years old, getting your first job, making your own money? What was your aspiration? You talked about, and I think it's funny because you said basically get a job that allows you to make the most money in the least amount of time so you can, quote, be more spiritual, which just shows that Jehovah's Witnesses just equate spirituality with the amount of time that you put into a thing.
Yeah.
You're more spiritual because you're a pioneer and you put in more time on your time slip that you turn in at the end of the month. I don't care who you really are. It's just that this is what, it's appearances again, it's performative. So how, what did you want to do?
It's funny because it is so that's when I started realizing how fake it was. I started regular pioneering at 18. How often would I make 70 hours in a month? Maybe 3 months out of the entire year would I get actually, for us, it was 70 hours at that time. But on paper, I'd be out there 85, 95 hours. A couple times I even had 100 hours in a month. But I started seeing nobody would question it. If it seemed like you were out in service every day, which I was almost every day, then they're not going to question that of course he has to be getting 100 hours a month or 80 hours. Of course he's got, 83 magazines placed. So I was doing that. I was fluffing up my JW side. My aspirations, my aspirations were what, again, other people wanted. My personalities was Ethan's personalities. And fortunately, him and I genuinely have the same personalities. We are two peas in a pod. But he was going to school for web design, digital arts, and media. So we could either be a web designer, a sound engineer, or get into some minor coding programming. So that's what he was going to school for. That's what I went to school for, because he had a car. I wasn't allowed to have a car, but he was able to go to the college and I was able to go with him. We would literally do everything together. At that point in life, that's all my life was doing everything that he did. He did everything I did. Um, like he would play guitar, I played guitar. You know, we'd have the same friend groups and all that. So yeah, that was kind of just like, it was going through the motions, um, doing what we were supposed to do in the Kingdom Hall. I got announced as a ministerial servant basically just after I turned 18 because I was so exemplary. Like none of the other teenage brothers got appointed, not even Ethan. Like none of them got appointed a ministerial servant at that time. My friend Kevyn, at that point, we had kind of stopped hanging out as much because he was very boring and still just into football, whereas me and Ethan were like super close. So I was announced minister, like the first brother that was my age that got pronounced ministerial servant. So they threw a lot of responsibilities at me. So I couldn't have a whole lot of focus on my own things other than going to college because I was working in the literature counter. I was running stuff in the sound department, running microphones all the time. Or looking back to it, that's so weird. Like it's such a privilege to grab a microphone and just hold it in front of somebody so they can answer a comment. Or like I forgot what the position was called, but like the guy that just sits up in the front so you can adjust the microphone for the speaker.
Oh gosh, I had to do that so much.
So
You're just in
stupid.
charge of stage, right? And
Yeah,
so
that's what it was, the stage.
yeah, you
And
have to
like,
adjust the microphones for everybody. I hated that so much.
or like if there was like a symposium, or not symposium, but like a number 3 talk or 2 talk with the sisters, you had to, in the middle of the song, run up on stage and put the microphones there and then adjust it for them. Or if somebody was giving like an example in the middle of the thing, they would let you know. So that way you run up at the last second and put up the microphone for them and like hook it up. It was such a weird thing. And especially like I did that at the circuit assembly and district assembly level. And like people look at you like a god, like, oh my God, this guy is adjusting the microphone for this district overseer. Like he's made it. He's able to do this job at the district level. Like such a stupid thing.
He can slave and be used at the district level. Look at
Yeah.
him. What a great what a great example he is of someone who willingly submits to everything we want him to do. What a great
Mhm.
company man, which we
Yep.
all were, at that level.
Hmm.
But I don't think I ever got to do it at the district level. So, I bow to the great stage hand at the district. I think I did a little bit the circuit, but no, it's funny to see
Not
the
everybody
things
could
that,
be at my level. Okay.
yes, it's funny to see the things that we got identity out of, sitting up on the platform reading the Watchtower on Sundays. Ooh,
Yeah, that
you
was
know,
also a big one too. What the heck?
or being in attendance and counting people or seating people or parking cars or just all the things that we did that somehow gave us some level of identity in the organization.
Yeah.
Shows how devoid of real identity it is, that this is how you get it
Like I
inside.
even remember like the brother that like if you're doing the Watchtower reading and then he also comment during the Watchtower reading, like that's like double spiritual right there. Like not only do you have this privilege to read the Watchtower, but you also are commenting from the heart about this. Like that is going above and beyond for Jehovah right there.
Yes. You're double dipping. More, you get more extra years in paradise, right? More everlasting life.
Which they always said that too.
Yes. So you're this young ministerial servant pioneer, which kind of tends to go hand in hand. If you, because I think I was a ministerial servant 18, 19 as well, because I pioneered right out of high school and I commented and did all the things that they wanted me to do. So like you, they threw a whole lot of things on me. So how long did you so you were a ministerial servant? Were you giving talks and things like that at any point? Did you give public talks out?
At that point, I had not yet been able to give a public talk, but a lot of it was because I was moving fast in like spirituality to the point where like I was, I don't want to say I was beyond public talks, but I had other goals and aspirations that I was working towards. And so they wanted to give me a little bit more like encouragement and space for that. So like I wanted to really badly to be a Bethelite.
Got it.
At that point, like I had joined the whatever, like RBC, I think it was a regional
Yep.
building committee or something like that. So I was doing that. The circuit overseer, like I said, he was in our kingdom hall. So he would just, because we were the cool congregation, we had three congregations, but we were like the cool one, the popular one. All our brothers are well known district level. In our kingdom hall, we had all of our brothers would give public talks at the district and circuit overseers, every single one regularly. Like that's just what it was. At that time, my stepdad became an elder. He was out there giving talks. Like we were always in the. I remember I got promoted from like the attendant crew to the, what was it, the account crew, I believe. So we'd count all the donations in the secret room in the back. And we'd like have to go collect all the money from the box, and like one of us would stand security while the other one like puts it in that discreet bag. So like we always had access to the back of the stage. I would give parts up on the stage. So like even though I wasn't giving public talks, I think that was just because I was young and they were preparing me for that by giving me all these other responsibilities. Like at that point, I was running the magazine department, literature, so I had to order all that stuff. I was working the territories, so we printed out and like restructure that. So it just I was super busy doing all those things. And the circuit overseers, like they would always again spend time with us. So like I would go door to door with the circuit overseer, and like I had an in with him. Like I would just go in the middle of the day after like the meeting, the field service, and I'd just go hang out with him in his little house behind the kingdom hall. We'd have coffee and talk. He personally gave me um, a Bethel application, both the temporary and the permanent one. And I remember like the district overseer came and hung out with us. He ended up moving into our kingdom hall after he retired from being a district overseer. So both of them sat down with me and helped me fill out the Bethelite application. And he actually personally took it to mail it to Bethel. I think he had some connections there. Everybody in our kingdom hall did. So it was signed off by them and sent over. So yeah, later that year, I was still 18. I got sent to Bethel. Sorry, no, 19. I was sent to Bethel at 19.
And oh, so were you at Brooklyn Bethel, or I mean, I know there's like the different locations.
Yeah, so weirdly, this apparently doesn't happen much, as rare. I got double accepted to Bethel. So I got accepted to Wallkill, temporary for 3 months, and then I got accepted to Brooklyn. And it just so happened that like the last week of my Wallkill overlapped my first week at Brooklyn. So I remember we gave them a call and they're like, "Oh shit, we don't know why this happened, but yeah, you could do both, I guess. Just let them know at the end, and like we'll just move your start date for Brooklyn 1 week later." So
okay,
I
so you
remember
went to
going.
Wallkill and then Brooklyn.
Mhm.
Okay,
So I remember going to Walk Hill and like everybody, like they all wanted to be permanent, but like because we were like I was put with the young guys. Like there was the older people that went temporary, but like all they wanted was temporary. They're already older and they couldn't afford either the time or the money to be there. So like I remember just being there and everybody was like, "I hope they accept my permanent status." And at the end, I think none of them got permanent. They all went back and they were so bummed. And I was just sitting there with a chip on my shoulder. I'm like, I got double accepted. I'm 100% staying. I got permanent status. And they're like, "Oh, what the fuck?" And then like I got permanent status at Brooklyn, and they're like flabbergasted because that's where the governing body lives, yo. Like that's like the most spiritual haven in the entire planet for Jehovah's Witnesses, and you're permanently gonna be there. Like what the hell? So like that's when like that stupid Jehovah's Witness status really started kicking in,
Well,
because our
sure.
Kingdom Hall.
Yeah, sure. Because now everybody looks at you. It's no wonder people that go sometimes get the big head about it, because
Mhm.
everybody's praising them at a level like, you're going to the most spiritual place on earth. You're going to meet the
Mhm.
governing body. Back before they were celebrities and out so much.
Mhm.
So what did you do at Wallkill? What was your like assignment, or what kind of things did you do there?
I was basically kind of like the cleaning slash like weird construction department. Like they were at that time, Wallkill was expanding. And I forgot exactly all the things they were doing. So like I constructed things, like, but it wasn't like I was construct because I had no construction experience. I was just like help move this thing to this place with this guy, and like have this bucket so you can sweep it out, or like use like some type of blower to like cool this thing up. Like it wasn't really anything special, just busy work. So that way the more important brothers can like fix the things, like the electricians and the plumbers can do their things, just make their life easier, basically.
Okay. Um, and so you were at Wallkill, and then do you immediately go to Brooklyn after that, or do you go back to Florida for a minute, or?
No, I went to Brooklyn immediately. So the last day was a Friday. I had the weekend, and then I'm going straight to like going in that Monday. So I remember, so at that time, because I was doing so good spiritually, like my stepfather was 100% different. He was actually a supportive dad, and I think it's because I made him proud. Like because he was able to use that clout as an elder. Like I have a Bethelite son, because he's already out there giving public talks and like popular in the district level. Right the year before, like the right before I went to Bethel, our congregation hosted the drama. I was this Egyptian slave because I was the only person of color. I was a slave. That's kind of looking
Oh
back on it, fucked up.
gosh, I'm sorry.
Ethan's dad, they're from Minnesota. Ethan's dad was like the king, and he was this white ass guy, and like he had little makeup, so he was the Egyptian king, of course. And meanwhile, I'm the little throne fanner over there, just like, I didn't have any lines or anything. I just stood there looking Egyptian, just like, here you go, sir. Here you go, king. But yeah, anyway, that's not the point. We were part of the drama, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
And so like we go from that to like now that guy that was just in the drama, he's in Bethel right now. He's above us. He's at a different level now. He's so like to him, like I was like incredible. I was able to be his bragging rights. So of course, like right between Wallkill and Bethel, they drove down all the way from Florida to Brooklyn to pick me up and like rave all about me. Like, where do you want to go to eat? I love this. You're doing so good. I'm jealous. I've always wanted to go to Bethel. I've always wanted to do this, but I never had the chance. And you're doing so good. And then they dropped me off at Brooklyn, and like I forgot the name of the building. They were like selling it like a month or a couple months after I got there at Brooklyn. It was like this old historic building that they were able to get millions of dollars from. But I had to stay there for that time. And I was able to, like, as a Bethelite, you can apply for other people to stay at Bethel as a privilege for them. And so I think you get that like every couple months, you get like a couple certain passes. So I was able to get them to be able to stay with me that weekend. And so again, I was like, wow, I was able to use my privilege to get them in. Like, oh my god, my son is so holy. He has all this like clout. So they were again like super lovey-dovey, amazing. Plus, I get to be in New York City. Like this is much different than Florida. Um, so yeah, and then they picked me up from Wallkill, dropped me off at Brooklyn, stayed that weekend, and then that was my beginning of the journey at Brooklyn.
So um I guess part of your dad, obviously he had that clout that he was getting.
Mhm.
I guess I wonder too a little bit if he treated you differently because you just, you're not in each other's way. You're not in each other. You're not in his purview anymore.
Yeah.
I remember my dad treated me a lot differently once I was out on my own and he wasn't watching all the time and criticizing and all the things that came along with that too.
Mhm.
It was a different type of relationship, I think, at that point a little bit. I mean, he was still who he was, but
Yeah.
um, did you did you did your sister get to come participate at all in this kind of stuff? Like, did she get to come up to
Yeah.
Bethel too? And did she think it was cool? Did you get to hang out?
Yeah. So like growing up, like, again, my sister, everything that I would have done and like been punished for, she got away with everything. She was stubborn. Eventually she ended up being like more compliant, but like she also grew up with that to the point where she saw me suffering. Like my sister and I were actually really, really close growing up. She she was the only person that saw my pain because of him. And even though she would like do like it was kind of like a mutual thing. Like she would help me and support me. And like she was like 9 years younger than me, but like we still had that bond. She would help me and support me because she saw me like suffer. I would cry so much. I remember the first panic attack I ever had. Her and I were downstairs. My stepdad and mom were up there. And like I thought I was about to die. I was feeling I have a heart attack and I just like fell to the ground, just like trying to catch my breath. And she saw that. And then afterwards, like she just kind of like stood there with me and just helping me out. I think she was probably like 12, 11 at that point. Um, but like she was between her and Ethan, like Ethan was there to help me out, but I didn't explain to him a lot of my emotions until later. My sister, she saw it all, so she was always there with me. Um, but she was always like I let her participate in everything and anything that I was doing. When I got my car, like I would take her anywhere with me, hang out, and we would go out together for dinner and like lunch, or like service together. Um, but like that was also my mid to late teens was like also the worst because my emotions, like that's when my real depression started hitting. I started getting really suicide. Um, I would do a lot of self-harm, but like I had the straight razor for whenever I shaved, but I would cut myself, but it was like superficial. For me, I would like punch myself as hard as I could, whether it was in my eyes or like my thighs. Like I literally would just sit there in the bathroom for hours. Just I'm surprised I didn't break my hand. How often and hard I was punching myself because I just felt like the dumbest, stupidest, like guiltiest, worst human. Like I was the black sheep of the family. Everybody else in the family, they kind of just coasted. My stepfather was okay with them. I was never, ever, ever good enough. And because of that, no matter what I did, I was never going to be worthy for anything. 17 was the first time I tried to kill myself. Um, I I thoroughly remember I just couldn't go to sleep. Everybody was also asleep. It was like 2 in the morning, and I was just in my bed, just bawling my eyes out. And I was guilty because I knew in my heart that I was questioning, but I couldn't. I shouldn't be doing this. Why is like because God has not taken this away from my heart, that must mean that I'm not only am I doing bad in my stepfather's eyes, but he's treating me like this because I'm not doing good in Jehovah's eyes. I remember being downstairs with a knife and like holding it to my heart. I was 100% gonna do that. Like, I was just crying to myself like really hard and just praying to God and apologizing to him that I was such a horrible human being. And the only thing that stopped me was I was imagining my little sister coming down the stairs because she was my emotional support. I remember just like, what if she walks downstairs in the morning and she sees me just dead on the floor? I didn't give a fuck about my mom or my stepdad finding. I would have honestly been okay with that. Because looking back on it, they were the ones that caused it. My mom's lack of anything, and then my stepfather's constant narcissism. But like, just, I couldn't let my sister, no matter how much pain I had, I couldn't let my sister see that. So like, I had a little cut from where the knife was, but I didn't go through with it. I just put it there, and I just stayed downstairs just bawling for hours. And I ended up going upstairs and, going back to sleep. But that was, again, like, that was a big constant in my life, was that negative emotional feeling. And Bethel was great for me because my stepfather was not on my ass. I had that freedom of, I don't have to call or answer to him anymore. Like, he always wanted me to call on the weekends, just check up. And I did that at first, but then after a while, like, I just focused on my Bethel stuff and my own freedom and hanging out with my friends. And I would call less and less. I would distance myself. And I guess that was a mask to my depression, because I felt it a little bit, but like, I didn't always feel that way. And like, I was able to be me, be comfortable.
Well, first, I'm glad that you had that relationship with your sister and that you're still here in part because of the thoughts about her. But I'm sorry that you ever had to hate yourself at that level. It's really sad that, how could Jehovah's Witnesses claim to be a religion of love, but they make people hate themselves? What a horrible, horrible. While I understand, yeah, your dad was a big part of that.
The religion wasn't innocent either. And like, to this day, I still battle feelings of hatred towards myself. Obviously, I'm not suicidal anymore, but I still have to fight the thoughts of hatred, like pure hatred to myself. Like, the way that you're taught to hate the devil, like that pure hatred, that's the type of hatred I have to fight against myself.
Understood. I've been there myself. 2008, I wouldn't be here today. If I hadn't worked with my wife every day and she was with me every day, I'm for sure I would have run my car off of something or into something. Mm-hmm. And it was pure self-hatred. And it came from all the negative messaging of my family and the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. And so, again, you're never enough no matter what you do. And I'm sorry that you had to feel that way and that you still have some of those feelings. I hope over time, you can work on more self-love, because that's the thing that none of us got. We were taught self-hatred and self-denial. We were not taught self-love. And that's something
Jehovah is number one. We're never going to be number one.
Yeah. At best, what you've done is only what you ought to have done. And again, you're to pummel yourself and lead yourself about as a slave for Jehovah. And so all these messages and the things that you probably still have in your head at times, you may even find that sometimes there's a specific voice attached to those things. Sometimes we literally are hearing our father or our mother or a specific brother or whatever in our head. It's like even in their voice in our head at times. And then, sadly, the thing that really hurts the most is that we internalize it and then we start doing it to ourselves in our own voice, because that's just what we learn to do to get by. Maybe I can hate myself into submission. I can hate myself into being good enough. What a wonderful way to live.
Yeah.
So how did you, you're at Bethel. How did you find it to be? Like, what was your life like there? Obviously, we talked a little bit about it in relation to your family. You're getting away. got other things going on. But how did you enjoy or feel about Bethel? What did you see around you? What did it mean to you when you were there, other than just the escape from this other thing?
So weirdly enough, Bethel is where the first inklings of me waking up and learning that I don't want to be here anymore is like, that's where it began. So I want to say the first, like when I first got to Brooklyn Bethel, it didn't take long, maybe like 3 months into it, 2.5 months into it, with the freedom that I had, I started realizing that like New York City is fucking awesome. Like there's so much shit for me to get into. Like Bethel pays like, I think they give you like $150 a month. So it's not like I had a whole lot of money, but fortunately I didn't have a car. And like brothers from my old hall, they would send me things like money. My stepdad would give me money, or pay for any flight that I wanted to go to. We went on a cruise on my 21st birthday, I remember. It wasn't for that, obviously, but it just happened to coincide. So like I was taken care of, and I was able to use that freedom to like hang out. So I ended up finding like the degenerate group of Bethelites, the ones that would drink every weekend, and we would all like none of us were losing our virginity or anything, but we would all casually date sisters without the intention of marriage. Because we were Bethelites, and so we were like the cool ones in New York City. So spiritually, I'd be out there inviting sisters to morning worship and like the lunchtime at Bethel, and like any Kingdom Hall I visited, like all the ladies would be around me. So I started realizing how to kind of be a ladies' man, flirting with sisters, like in the Jehovah's way of flirting.
Of course, yeah.
So I was, I would have been considered loose, but because I was a Bethelite, like I was cool. Like I was around the other Bethelites. We would go out to bars. We would be like those Bethelites that would go out drinking at a bar.
I mean, did you have to look hard for those Bethelites? I mean, from what I gather, it sounds like the drinking culture at Bethel is pretty prominent, and that a lot of the Bethelites participate in that.
They did. You just know how to hide it, because as long as you don't cause anybody to question you, you show up for morning worship, you make it to your meetings, and the brothers at the meet, because every congregation you're assigned to, there's typically going to be a couple Bethelites there. So you, as long as you show, like, save face in front of everybody and have a good reputation amongst the who are important, you don't have to really worry about doing whatever. So like I would go out to concerts all the time. Like that's when I really realized that I love drinking and I love hanging out with people. I don't care if they're worldly. I'd go out there. I would have worldly people like hit on me, and I didn't really know how to reciprocate it. But like I also wasn't that guy that was like, I can't be doing this, Jehovah's watching. Like I just didn't care. I stopped giving a fuck. And it started showing near the end of my Bethel career, which is that's a big reason why I didn't get. Every year you have to basically like re-up, and like if you are doing well, they'll let you stay another year.
I mean, like you have a contract almost, and you have to see if you're good for another year's contract.
Another year of free labor.
Yes, but you have to beg to get. It's interesting too, because it sounds like what you're saying, and again, it goes back to the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses being very performative. It sounds like as long as you performed and you did what you needed to do in front of the people you needed to do it in front of, you could kind of go off to the side and do your own thing a little bit. And
and like near the end of it, like I was missing meetings and kind of giving excuses. I'd be late or not show up to morning worship and not care. I wasn't doing really well. I was in the cleaning department. I wasn't doing super well with my duties in the cleaning department. And like they could tell that I was losing motivation. I just wasn't good enough. I obviously didn't tell that to the brothers at, my old congregation. They were just super excited that I was a Bethelite. I started giving a couple talks. I kind of bullshitted my way into my first public talk because this is before we had JW Library, but we had I guess it was called the Watchtower Library, and like there was the one that the people got that you were able to order that disc every year through the literature.
Mhm.
But then like at Bethel, we had our own like advanced Watchtower Library where it had all the newest articles because like the ones that everybody else got, they were like a year behind. So we had everything updated, but we also had access to every single public talk, every single outline that they would use like at district or circuit level because they trusted us not to share. So my favorite outline was a creation one. I forgot the name of the talk, but it was like the one all about Jehovah and his creation. So me and a couple Bethelite friends, the degenerate ones, we went to Virginia one weekend to go visit some friends that I had met at a party in New York, a Jehovah's Witness party, but there was a lot of drinking, and you know how they get with the young people. You could barely tell if they're Jehovah's Witnesses. Nobody's praying or doing anything.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, I met them there. She was really cute, so I wanted to go there and like, you know, see if I could spark something. But at the end of the day, we just ended up being friends. And we went there, and I kind of told them that like, yeah, you could tell the brother on Sunday that I'm willing to give a public talk. Let him know that the Bethelite's willing to do that. I didn't think they were going to do that. But this was like a month before I went, and they're like, oh yeah, 100%. We'll cancel the speaker that we have that weekend, and he'll give that public talk. And I didn't find that out but a week before I got there. So I had to whip up an entire outline in less than a week before I got there. And I procrastinated. I was barely like, I was still writing it like the day before, and even the day that I was there. And I gave it, and I was really nervous. I thought I did terrible, but everybody fucking loved it. They were like, pick and choose. Where do you want to go for after the talk? We'll all take you there, and like we'll pay for you and your Bethel friends. Like they were just so excited to have a Bethelite in the middle of somewhere in Virginia. And like I remember that was the first time I actually got blackout drunk, and just like wasted was that weekend. I remember going to sleep the first day that I got there. We went out to this bar that this girl, her friend owned. I had so much to drink. I had too many Long Island iced teas. I remember waking up on her ottoman, just curled up, a big man curled up on her ottoman with like a little blanket on me, and like we just kept on drinking. So yeah, I just realized that like debauchery was like super fun, and I could get away with this as long as I pretend to be super spiritual. So yeah, that's what I was doing. And then I got basically kicked out at the end of the year and a half that I was at Bethel. I went back to the congregation, but they all thought I was bringing spiritual knowledge and spiritual food from the governing body. But I wasn't. I was just like at night, because I had to do the night shift for security. I remember like going through the governing body's offices because they were always unlocked, and like look in their drawers to see if there was like any cool things or any new things. I remember seeing the new Bible, like the gray one.
When they were gonna release the
Mhm.
silver one.
Yeah.
Also, you were there right before the governing body became superstars.
Yeah. So like I was going through that. Like I remember they had just brought in, I forgot, was it Morris? Or I forgot the name of the newest like governing body. Oh, what's the really fat one? That looks like a weird teddy bear.
I mean, there's Jeffrey Jackson.
He was like the younger one.
Jeffrey Jackson was one of the younger ones, I think.
He was. I think he was even young. Sanderson, him.
Mark Sanderson.
Yeah, like he was the new governing body member that had just happened there. That's when they like just redid Brooklyn too. Like they had like this exhibit that you were able to go through. So it was like that same year, like all those things were happening. And that's when I was there. So I was going through all this shit, rummaging to see if there was any like cool things. I wasn't doing it in a way where like I wish I did. I wish I was like questioning them like more, because I wanted to release those things and like go on the exjw Reddit, all that stuff. But it was just more out of weird curiosity. Like, I'm here, let's see what I can find.
Did you ever find anything?
Other than the new releases that haven't been released yet, that's it. Like I didn't look into anything to see if there was like weird evidence for anything else. Again, I wish I did, but I did.
I mean, I'm sure they don't keep the cool stuff out, or just anybody.
Probably. It's probably locked away on purpose.
I'm sure it is. They've got Toni Morris's liquor stash and another in a secret vault.
Yeah. I think I saw recently like a picture of him like wearing tight pants or something like that. I remember he was the one that like made such a big deal about tight pants. Like specifically, it was such a weird thing. It's also a weird phase that a lot of brothers did. Like the edgy, cool younger brothers would have like tight suits. I was one of them that had very slim fit clothing, and like the super spiritual brothers could get away with it, but the ones that were like not like known to be bad association, like all of a sudden it was like you're worldly fashion. But like a spiritual brother like me, like he's revolutionizing what brothers could look like.
It's so ridiculous. So you know, how did you get, I guess I would ask, did you have any friends at Bethel? Did you feel like you fit in at all while you were there? Did you, I mean, I know you were going out and doing some things, but I mean, did you find people that you bonded with there and that you particularly had a good time with?
Yeah. Like basically a lot of the guys in the cleaning crew, like I found like a really cool group of those guys that we would, on weekends, we'd go surfing at Jones Beach or we'd go to a restaurant. We were all into longboarding. So we would like longboard through New York. Ethan, he would come visit me sometimes and like we'd go hang out and just go random places, eat, like go to certain parties. There was this one dude, he left Bethel too. Sam, and we were like really good friends. I was actually in his wedding party. And him and we'd go to like concerts together and go to bars because he was like super chill. Like he was the stoniest stoner in the world without actually being a stoner, like that kind of chill. So him and I would like hang out and like you go to bars and stuff. But yeah, like I had a nice little group of friends. Like we would listen to rap music, but not edited kind of thing, or we would listen to metal music. And not be possessed by Satan. Sometimes some of us would go to like rated R movies at the movie theater together. And we're all Bethelites, but none of us said anything or did anything about it. So like I had a nice solid group of friends.
Sounds like you worked hard and you played hard too.
Basically.
That makes sense. I mean, for a lot of you guys, it's your first time ever really with any independence to some degree. And you're finding it right there at Brooklyn Bethel, which is kind of a weird place to find it, but hey,
it is. But hey,
it also makes sense.
It's the funnest place to find it too. Like if you're in Wallkill or Patterson, like I feel sorry for those brothers because you're in the middle of nowhere. You can't find shit. You gotta drive like an hour and a half to find the closest Walmart or the closest little town. Like those are so isolated. I felt really lucky that I was able to be around such an incredible influence of worldliness, as they say, because that was amazing. I loved it.
Well, not a criticism of the town of Warwick because I don't really know much about it, but perhaps that's even a part of the reason that they moved. I mean, that and the huge sums of cash they got from selling the property, but going to Warwick again, more isolated, out away from the influences of a city like New York City. I'm sure that the brothers now at Bethel don't have those same opportunities.
Their own private, self-sustained little ecosystem. Brooklyn, and I'm sure like that was a big problem. A lot of brothers, because I knew a couple of brothers that got DF'd while there, because it's like modern day Sodom and Gomorrah for those guys. Like they were in the middle of the most temptation inducing town in all of US probably. So I'm sure Warwick was definitely the biggest reason. No, that and the massive amount of money they're able to get from the real estate.
Sure. So how did you end up leaving Brooklyn for yourself? I mean, you said I think you said kicked out.
Yeah.
Was there something specific that precipitated it? Was it just that you weren't doing your duties or
Yeah.
whatever?
I
And
just
so,
wasn't obviously wholehearted enough for them. And so they're like, unfortunately, we have to, we're going to send you back to their home congregation. We are, we're not going to move forward with having you here again. And I was just like, oh, that sucks, but okay, whatever.
and
Um,
how
it-
much, like, what is it? Is it very unceremonious? I mean, is it basically like, we're going to send you back and 24 hours later you're on a plane? I mean, like, what do they give you time to get ready or do
they
anything?
do. It was, I believe, a month before, because,
Okay.
from the time that I joined, like obviously the anniversary of that, I think a month before that is when they'll they'll have a talk with you. They'll go over like, you did well. We appreciate your work here, but and they don't like say like because of this, this, and this, you're going. They're just like, basically, you understand that we're building Warwick, and so we're gonna have to. And it was true; they were doing a massive downsize of Brooklyn so they could move to Warwick. So they were letting a lot of Bethelites go that were actually super good and spiritual. But I was just an easy way for me to get lumped into that. Like we're downsizing, and unfortunately, we're not in need of your services, and we're sad to see you go. But we're gonna send you at the end of this next month. Like you're gonna go back to Florida. They paid for it. Um, that was basically, it was unceremonious. It was just like if a corporate company was just, hey, we no longer need you. Here's a severance package, and take your shit and go.
And how it sounds like you said, it sucks, but all right. How did your stepdad react to finding that you were coming home and such? How did people react to that? You said like a lot of people were excited because they thought you were bringing,
Mm-hmm.
Jehovah's Holy Spirit itself, I'm sure. But did your dad have that reaction or
Yeah,
was okay?
yeah, it was odd, but like again, like they didn't know the circumstances. They didn't know that my spirituality was waning.
Okay.
In their eyes, it was just like it makes sense. Yeah, they are downsizing, and this is for the greater good. Jehovah has better plans for you. This is you're fulfilling the purpose of God. Like we know that you're gonna come back, and like everybody thought that I was gonna be an elder, like real young, real soon, probably like the first 25-year-old elder that they probably would have had there. I was 21, but like, within a couple of years, I'm pretty sure I would have been made an elder. Um, like they were super excited to have me because again, it's just another collection of ex-Bethelites in this kingdom hall for them to, brag about and use me even more for privileges that are mundane and useless. But yeah, like at first, I want to say the first like 3 months being back at my stepfather's house, like it was great. It was relaxing. There was no stress. He bought me a car, and he was like, take your time, because I went back to pioneering, and I was still a ministerial servant immediately. Like they assigned me a couple public talks. They gave me new outlines to work up. So he was like, yeah, here's a car. I was pioneering. As long as you do Jehovah's will always support you. You'll always have a place. Stay here as long as you need. They would give me more money. I was able to get a job working back with my brother again. Um, and yeah, like it was great. Like I was able to stay at home and sleep. And sometimes on the weekend, I didn't go out on service, but I would be able to sleep in. And there was never any issue. There was always just like, do what you have to do. You're super spiritual now. You finally graduated in my eyes to this proud, amazing son, because I looked so good and I made him look good in the congregation. But that only lasted like 3 months.
Okay. So what would happen over those 3 months? It sounds like something changed.
Um, I just kind of again started fading. So near the end of my Bethel career, I messaged this girl on Instagram because I had Instagram had come out. I was basically connecting with every single JW female that I could find on Instagram. And like on my Instagram, I mentioned I was a Bethelite. My page was open. you'd see me pictures of me at Bethel doing Bethel things. And so like I was obviously legitimate in what I was claiming. So like every single female would obviously, they all want to marry a Bethelite, especially if you're in Bethel. Like, oh my God, that's the life right there for any sister. So I had my pick of any sister that I wanted to. And this one, she was in Puerto Rico. She only spoke Spanish, but I thought she was like the most beautiful person at the time. And we were talking and talking, and we would talk every day. We would talk on the phone. We'd kind of get a little raunchy. Like we'd have like phone sex and stuff while we were still in Bethel. But kind of what sent it over the edge was there was an international convention in New York, and I invited her and her family, and they all came. I was able to get invitations for them, and we came, and that was a wrap. Like we were in love. I remember me and one of my friends, like he had a girlfriend. She was my girlfriend, so he was my chaperone. He would go into her house with this girl, and who knows what they were doing. And then me and Raquel would be on our own in New York City, and we'd be we would do everything but sleep together, basically. So like at that point we knew like we can't get away with doing this without getting married. So, we just basically had that in mind. Like this was not going to be my wife. This is my wife. I'm in love with her. She loves me. She went back to Puerto Rico. I went back to Florida. Everybody had known at that point, like my parents knew that I was dating. They would tell me like, we'll support it, but you just have to make sure that you plan it right. Have a job, maintain your spirituality. I remember she visited, and like that's when again, like the 3 months I started waning. So I stopped really pioneering that well. I ended up stopping pioneering, period. I started rebelling against my stepfather because I had first, like I knew the game, how to live by his rules, but I started breaking them and not caring. He wanted me to be back at 11. And if I was going to be late, let him know. And then he'll be okay with that. I wouldn't let him know. And I'd be back at 11:30. And he'd be pissed. He'd be that disappointed dad that would sit on the couch in the dark, waiting for you. I ended up getting my EMT license. He didn't like that because I would be gone for 12 hours, and I purposely chose an overnight shift so that way I could sleep during the day. I would see him as little as possible, be at work. 12-hour shifts that turned into like 14-hour shifts, and I was okay with that. It was fine. I was really good EMT paramedic, so I continued doing that. And then all the while I was dating this girl. She ended up coming to Florida, and they didn't like because I was always like next to her. We were like super close and lovey-dovey. We would hold hands, and they hated that. I remember we went to the presiding overseer's house. They were cooking dinner for us, and I brought her along. They all loved her. They were cool. I translated because she couldn't speak English. But he got so pissed that I was sitting next to her basically the whole time on the couch. Like we were like this close. We were basically touching. And that was embarrassing to him because that's the PO of the congregation. And I think he was a service overseer, my stepdad was. So it's like, you are providing such a bad image. That's basically when it just kind of went downhill. Because I started my own PayPal with her because he had access to everything, my phone, my internet, my bank account. So I would put money in our bank account, me and Raquel's, and he would be absolutely livid because he would force me to give him the password to our bank account because he wanted to see how much money we had in there. And I refused because I was like, this isn't just mine. This is hers. You will not
why
have
is
access.
this any of his business?
Everything was his business.
Of course, he's a
Everything.
he's a controlling narcissist. So yeah,
my text messages were to the point where I would delete it, but he would go to the phone carrier and have them send him the transcripts of the deleted messages.
Ooh.
He worked in tech, so even if I deleted my internet history, he could undelete it by some weird Wi-Fi magic shit. So like that's when I bought my own cell phone plan. Like I was becoming more of an individual and not reliant on his shit because I was making my own money. And he absolutely hated that. I ended up totaling. He bought me 2 cars. I totaled both of them out of just ignorance and being dumb. But I ended up getting my own car. So, well, he helped me get it, but I paid for it. But it was under his name and my name on the title. But yeah, I was just actually becoming more independent and stopping asking permission and doing things that he did not agree with. And I also stopped giving a fuck about the truth in the religion. I realized that that's not me. I would use my work as an excuse to go out and just like hang out with worldly people. And that's when we would get into really bad arguments to the point where he would threaten physical violence. Like I remember a specific night, like my mom asked me to do something and because I was really honest with my mom. I told her like he's weighing down on me real hard. And she's like, I know, just do what he says. So that way, it won't be as hard on you. Like, I can't do that. I can't. That's not how I am. It's making me too unhappy to do this. And then he confronted me about something. I don't even remember what it is. And I disagreed with him. And then he's like, so you're calling your mother a liar? Because he's twisting her words against mine. And I told her no. I told him no. Like, I'm not saying that she's a liar. I'm saying this is my truth. It is different from hers and it's different from yours. And basically, he ended up forcing me. He like, so you're calling your mom a liar? Say it. Call your mom a liar. Say you are a liar. And I was like, no. Like, this is what I'm saying. And he just wasn't hearing it. And so I finally conceded and I said, Mom, you're a liar. And he was maybe about 20 feet away sitting at his desk. Like I had to like stand there like at almost like a position of attention, like in the military, and like be yes sir, no sir. So I was just standing there, my hands behind my back. And he fucking lunged out of his chair and like grabbed me by my shoulders and slammed me against the wall. And he always gave me this threat, but this is the first time he put hands on me as an adult and put me against the wall. He like pinned me down. He was a strong guy, short, but like stocky. So he like pushed me against the wall and he's like, I will throw you through this wall if you ever say anything like that again. You called your mom a liar. You dare do this to her face and mine, blah, blah, blah. So that was really the beginning of like my true rebellion. Because I pretended like that didn't scare me, even though my heart was going crazy. I didn't give him what he wanted then, and I continued to like fight hard against his shit. I wasn't gonna allow his narcissism to get to me, and it still did, but not nearly as bad as it used to.
Well, yeah, because now you were kind of awake to what was really going on and knew that it wasn't really something to be respected. May have been something to be feared, depending on who he was and what he was capable of. But that's just more abuse being piled on. So how do you get out of this? What's your path out of? I mean, how do you get away from him?
So I had 2 attempts. The second one was obviously successful. Here I am. The first attempt was not. So this is the story of my first attempt. So I could fill hours of worth of stories on all the arguments we had, but the final one was about the finances. He needed to know the password to the PayPal account to see how much money Raquel and I had. And I kept on refusing. And he was like, this is my house. If you can't abide by the rules of my house, then there's no reason for you to be here. Basically threatening me to kick me out of the house. And he's like, just pack your stuff up and leave if you're going to be doing this. And so I was going to call his bluff. He had his own business, so he had to leave the house to take care of a client. And like we had this argument, he left to do whatever, like get dressed or whatever. And so I grabbed my suitcase, started putting my clothes in the suitcase in the bag because I'm just pissed. I'm angry. And like my sister's doing, because she's homeschooled too. So she's there in the office hearing all this and just kind of sitting there like, oh, what the fuck is going on? So out of anger, I'm packing my shit because little did he know, I was already planning on leaving. I just didn't know how to tell them. I had went on Craigslist and met these two like young people that they had an apartment and they needed a third roommate to afford it. At that time, I was working at a hospital, making decent money as a medic in the ER. So I had already planned on moving with them. So it was like that week, the following week that I was supposed to move in. So this is a perfect opportunity because he told me he'll kick me out if I needed to, if I don't follow his stuff. So I was packing. He walked back into the room and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, you told me that if I don't give you the password to this bank account, that, pack my stuff up and leave. So I'm doing that right now." And he got so pissed. He was like, "You are not leaving. You have no plan to leave. Where are you gonna go? How are you doing this? You like basically I can't live without him," kind of thing. So he was like, "You better fucking," he didn't curse, but he was like, "You better fucking be here when I get back and we're gonna talk about this seriously with your mother. If you leave, the car's under my name and I will call the police and I will report it stolen." And then he left because he needed to. So then I called the police and I asked them, "Hey, my name is on the title of this car, but so is my stepfather's. If I drive it away, will he be able to report it stolen?" And they're like, "No, your name is on the title. You own it just as much as he does. So there's nothing we can legally do about it. He can't do anything about it legally either." So I pack my bags. I tell my sister goodbye. She's starting to cry because she knows what's going on. And like, I'm really emotional too. I'm angry, but also like sad and devastated. But I already had a plan. This was my escape, perfect opportunity. I left and I moved into the new place. And my parents called, like when they got back, they were calling me, didn't answer. They were texting me, they didn't answer. The brother that they were super close to, they didn't answer. Meanwhile, at this time, I forgot to mention, I was approved because it came to light that me and Raquel were doing some naughty things that we shouldn't have. We didn't go all the way, so obviously none of us were disfellowshipped, but we both lost our privileges. I was no longer a servant, she was no longer a pioneer, but we still had the intention to get married. That didn't stop us. But that was also a weird thing. Why do they got to ask you so much about your sex life and the things that you did? They like all the details, like in the room with all these old guys.
Sexually abusive themselves, in that instance as well. And it's power, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I don't know, we did that. But yeah, I ended up leaving and moving out. And that was the weekend of the circuit assembly. So I remember I went to the circuit assembly with my friends and came back. And that was like the first time that I saw my stepdad and my mom. They were fucking eyeballing me hard the whole time, but they weren't going to talk to me and I wasn't going to talk to them. I talked to my sister, but that's about it. Never told them my address, no matter how hard they tried to find it. And that was that. Like after that, like little by little, I started distancing myself from the Kingdom Hall. I told them that I was going to a Kingdom Hall 30 minutes away because I didn't want to go back to the hall. So just to let them, like, make them think that I was still going, but just somewhere else. And they kind of believed it. They kind of just let it go for a little bit. I was still hanging out with Ethan. He was the only one that knew where I was, but he was still very spiritual, but I wasn't. So that's kind of how I left the first time.
Okay, so it sounds like because you're saying that's how I left the first time, there must have been a going back of sorts. So did you go back, just to like your parents' place, or did you go back to, are you talking about even going back to the meetings and things like that?
Both. I did that out of necessity. So I left, and like I was 100% like I smoked weed for the first time because I live with two worldly people. They didn't know this. Nobody knew this. But I live with two worldly people. I was out there drinking with worldly people, doing worldly people things. I was hanging out with girls that were worldly. Um, and that's when I first lost my virginity. And I mean, this is kind of fucked up because I was cheating on Raquel. But at the same time, like I was exploring a lot more about myself. Um, but I ended up getting fired from my hospital job because it was for a stupid reason that wasn't my fault, but the nurse practitioner did not like me. And it was difficult for me to get another job really quickly in the medical field. So I wasn't able to pay rent. And I was picking up odd jobs on Craigslist, but they were only enough money for me to basically eat like a burger from Burger King a day. And the rest was like just enough to have gas. So I was living out of my car, even though I had an apartment, because I couldn't afford to do anything else. And it got to the point where I was also living in the car in the parking lot of the apartment complex because I couldn't face seeing my two roommates who also couldn't afford rent without me. Because they would question me every single time. And I hated that. I felt so embarrassed. And I didn't want to go back to my parents because I didn't want to admit that I fucked up. And I didn't want to have to deal with the fact that I ran away from Jehovah and all that. And so I did the best that I could for the longest time. And for some reason, I don't know how I did it, but I told you that my friend from Bethel, he got married and I was in his wedding.
Mm-hmm.
He actually ended up paying for me to go fly over there to be part of his wedding, and then his dad paid for me to come back. And I stayed with him, so I didn't really have to pay for much of anything. But yeah, I went there, and basically the week that I came back was the week that I moved in with my stepfather because he hacked into my Google account and saw that I messaged a worldly girl in like a provocative way. He told Raquel, she broke up with me. He told me that like he finally he found out where I was living, reached out to them. I kind of told them a lie that my parents died and blah blah blah, a sob story. They found out the sob story. Basically, it was a you need to come home kind of thing. You have nowhere else to go. We know that you can't afford rent kind of thing. So I got back from Kansas. They picked me up, and I went back to their home, the Kingdom Hall, with a lot more new rules.
Oh, you got your own stalker there.
Yep, as he normally does.
Wow. So you went back, you said there's some new rules. I can only imagine. I mean, goodness, he controls everything he can anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it had to be hard to see that relationship go by the wayside. Had to be hard. I mean, it sounds like you were struggling with a lot of things at that time anyway, which kind of makes sense with just everything. But so now you said there was a second time that you left. So I don't know what happens. So you go back, and then how do we get to the second time?
So I want to say it was about a year in total. So after that, so I was privately reproved by the brothers when I came back because they found out everything. Again, I have to give them all the details. But yeah, my stepfather just had more rules. Like every night the phone had to be in his room. This was maybe like 3 months, but like the phone had to be in his room to make sure that I wasn't getting any lewd messages at night. He had to know where I was at all times, but like to the extreme. I basically couldn't hang out with anybody, like even Ethan for a while. All my activities were monitored. I had to go to service. I had to basically prove myself that coming back to the religion. And if I did that, I would be able to stay in his house under his rules. And after 3 months, at that point, I knew the routine of how he was. So I I'm laser focused on doing what he wants, doing all these things. I'm tired. I don't know how to, I know I'm going to get out. I don't know how. I wasn't making enough money to afford anything on my own. So like I was making enough money to take care of myself, like financially, but not like pay rent. So like I just was lost. I didn't know what to do. And then, months of this going by, I'm like start getting more freedoms. I start I get back into a job as an EMT, again, working the night shift. I work 3 days a week, but in his eyes, I'm working 5 days a week. That's when I start finding out that I could like really hide my double life because I'm out there on Tinder and there's no Jehovah's Witness on Tinder. So I'm matching girls left and right in Tampa. That's where I work. Tampa's 45 minutes from Tarpon Springs. So
Tarpon Springs, I know that.
Yeah, that's where I was living.
Oh, okay.
And those 2 days a week that I said I was working on the night shift, I was, going on my Tinder dates and doing my little things. I had my own bank account. I had my own car. There was no question. Like he started trusting me a lot because I was doing things by the book and like to the point where there was never anything he could question. Like I got so good at lying to his face and being that chameleon. And in the meantime, me and Ethan were hanging out with the other young people. They know that I was going through some stuff, but not like to the point where I was bad association. And I'd be going to witness parties and stuff. Ethan was moving into an apartment that he was going to be getting with another friend of ours. I ended up somehow, because we were best friends, I was able to talk myself into moving in with them. So I actually told my parents about that. They were very reluctant and begrudged, but I told them that I'm doing this because I know I want to do this and I'm going to still be holy and spiritual, attend the meeting. And I did. I got rid of my car and got a motorcycle. So like I was being more edgy, but I was still attending every meeting and pretending like I was going out in service. So that way I wouldn't get in trouble at the hall. And then out of the blue, I saw an ad for the military. Started doing research. And I thought like, wow, these guys are badass. This could be my way out. And I went and I saw a recruiter. And then he's like, when do you want to sign up? We have slots. If you sign up and leave in 2 weeks, you'll get like an extra $10,000 bonus, signing bonus. So I'm like, all right, put me up for that. And didn't tell anybody, not even Ethan, which I'm sad about. But I mean, we hashed it out at the end. He left the religion now too, and we're like still the best of friends.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and like we were actually talking about this podcast yesterday and like how I'm gonna be on it. We were having like a fun talk and just bashing Jehovah's Witnesses. But yeah, so I didn't even tell him though. At that point, he was still like trying really hard to be in it. I told nobody. Like I was actually nervous when the recruiter picked me up and in front of our apartment because we had like several Jehovah's Witnesses living in that apartment complex. And he was like in military uniform. So like I thought I was gonna get outed then, but I didn't. I remember right before I left, I watched Logan. I came out, a rated R superhero movie. Saw that by myself. And then I got out the movie theater. The next day, my recruiter picked me up. I left my motorcycle at the at my job. I left everything. Didn't tell anybody because I didn't pack anything except for what I had on me, my wallet. So I got picked up and sent to MEPS and processed until I got to the military, started boot camp.
So you just ghosted your life, basically.
Ghosted my life, just cut everything off and ran away.
Obviously, somebody's going to notice at some point that Kevin is gone. So what in the world is that like? So you just leave and go do this whole army thing. I mean, so when do people start reaching out? Or did they even have a way to reach out? Had you left literally your phone and everything else? I mean, were you just gone?
So I had my phone. The lie that I started telling like my roommate Ethan There was this girl that I was starting to talk to, which I honestly, of all the things, I feel the worst for her because she never dated anybody. And her and I got really close. She was in the Spanish congregation and she was really liking me. Her family liked me. I'm pretty sure she was expecting me to ask her out. And if I stayed, I would have and married her, honestly, and the right way this time. But I told her, I told Ethan, and I told a couple of really close people that I'm being sent to Texas for about a couple months because I'm going to flight training for being a flight paramedic on a helicopter, and it's being paid for and everything. So I'm going to be back in a couple months. Um, and then yeah, so they were ready for it. Like I told Ethan that I was going, but he thought that it was going to be like a little bit later, a little bit longer process. But he kind of believed it. I could tell he was hesitant. I was like, yeah, they got a Kingdom Hall maybe like 30 minutes away from where I'll be. So of course I'm going to still be going to meetings and stuff. But yeah, other than that, nobody else knew. And I was just gone. And then in basic training, they take your phone. They take all of the things. You're only allowed to send a letter to anybody. And to keep up the lie, I sent a letter to Ethan. And as a dummy, I put a return address on there. I put a return address on there because I asked him if he could send me something, like one of my documents or something like that. And we talked about this yesterday actually. And he was like, I saw that and I was like, is this an army address? No way he could be in the army. What is this? Oh, and he, like, in his spiritual due diligence, he had to say something. So
Of
he showed
course,
it.
yeah.
He showed it to my parents. He showed it to the elders, and immediately calls, texts, emails. And then
Now you weren't getting those calls, right?
nope.
Okay.
And it got to the point where somehow I don't understand how he did this. So leave it up to my stepfather. He'd be the one to do it. I got the lip eye. Here we go. Leave it up to my stepfather. He found the number for the commander of my unit in basic and called to try and reach out to me.
I'm sure your commander was thrilled to hear from him.
Oh yeah, he called. I remember being called into the office, and he had to stand in the position of attention and address them based off of rank and all that. And he was like, why is mommy and daddy calling my office? And I gave him a very brief explanation. And he's like, okay, I don't really care what it is. Take care of your shit. Do not have your parents call me while you're in basic training. Don't do that. So obviously I didn't. And that was the end of me sending Ethan any letters. I sent the girl that I was talking to, I sent her a couple letters, but somehow because that was the only person that I could read. I was lonely. Everybody on the week, like, you would get your phone. Basic training was 3 months. Every 3 weeks you would get your phone and you were able to call your family members, your loved ones. And that's when I started realizing how lonely I was, because this is a new world to me. And I started making friends in the military. But then the moment everybody got their phone for like 30 minutes, I was just sitting there in the corner by myself. I had my headphones and I would listen to music. But they're texting their moms, their dads, their wives, their girlfriends. They're all so proud. You're making me so happy. You're serving your country. You're becoming a soldier. You're becoming an awesome, amazing person. I'm so proud. And my phone has no calls, no text messages. All of my contacts are Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm just kind of sitting there by myself. And it sucked. It really hurt. I didn't cry, but internally, like at night, I would, just because I felt so alone. And I felt like I had like one final, like, did I do this the wrong way? Am I gonna die because I did this? And I came to the realization that I made the right decision. It's just a hard decision. And yeah, it's like all of basic training was just kind of that, really just focusing on myself, focus on this military journey. And in a way, like, yeah, I left one controlling religion to another really strict, rigid life,
Yeah.
but it was freeing in the fact that I had what I needed. I had a place to stay. I had food. I had clothes given to me. I had a direction that I was forced to go with. And like afterwards, I kind of regret doing that too, because it's fucked up the things that I had to do, and it's messed up my head with PTSD. But at the same time, I'm happy because I was able to get out of this and I had something to start my life over again. I have more benefits than I have negatives coming out of the military. Um, I was bad at getting and maintaining relationships like with women. I didn't know how to be a good boyfriend. Um, I was married while I was in, and I was a bad husband. We broke, we met on Tinder. 3 weeks later, we were married.
Oh,
And
wow.
about 4 months later, we were divorced. I was terrible at maintaining finances. I was in a very abusive, toxic relationship with this woman it was on and off again. We would both cheat on each other, come back. She would be controlling, and she was like narcissistic, like my stepfather.
Of course.
Um,
We tend
but
to
like,
repeat the patterns. That's where we're comfortable. We
yeah,
know
but
that one.
it was just, and eventually, like, we ended up separating for good, and I'm happy about that. But she was, in a lot of ways, like my stepdad. Just she was pretty. um, but yeah, I remember like at the end of basic training and at the end of AIT, you graduate and everybody's parents and families there, and I had nobody. So I found this other guy. We were like actually pretty close. We both kind of flew under the radar in the military, and he had nobody come visit him either. So him and I both like we went to Taco Bell and bought like $40 worth of tacos. We went to go see a stupid ass movie. We just spent the day with each other, just doing just shit that you would do if you had no family to come visit. So that was great. Like I started realizing that worldly people are just people,
Yeah, they're
and
just people.
Jehovah's Witnesses are the bad ones. We're actually like worldly people are good. Nothing is Satanistic. Like then I started realizing that like if Satan was real, why the fuck would he do the things that he does, that they say he does? Like why is he gonna make me watch a movie and then possess me through a movie because it has like a demon in it or a ghost? Like why are the demons so controlling over us, or like why are they gonna like throw a chair at me or like make me have a scary dream so I could leave Jehovah?
Yeah, why do they have more power than Jehovah?
Yeah, and then I like, well, okay, so why are these demons that used to be angels, they're able to do this? Why am I not seeing an angel come and like, like I got injured a couple times, or like when I was deployed, there was like a lot of really fucked up shit that I had to do and see. Like, so this would be the result of the devil. This is what I'm seeing the devil would do. But why am I not seeing an angel who has the same power as a demon not come and heal these people or stop this violence or lift this vehicle up from this person that got crushed by an explosion? Like, why can I not see these things? Like, it doesn't make any sense when you break down all the things that they did. And like I left for just my own personal reasons. I never actually researched Jehovah's Witnesses, the child sexual abuse. I never did any of that, not because I was afraid of being an apostate. I just I cut everything off so clean that I didn't want it to take up any mental space at all. I wasn't ready to confront any of that either. I started a new life, new chapter. Everything was completely new.
A lot of people do that. It's the way to survive in the moment sometimes, but it's not the way to truly heal.
It's
Uh,
not.
but but it got you through the day, and it was something. Again, it provided you basic survival, but
Mhm.
healing involves looking at it all.
Definitely.
Um, Can I ask how long were you so you were in the Army?
I was.
And how long did you serve?
I was about 3 years, maybe a little bit over 3 years, or just under, something like that. I left early due to medical reasons.
Okay. And if it's not okay to say, you can say so. I mean, did you serve in like Afghanistan or,
Yeah, I was
somewhere
deployed
abroad?
internationally. Pardon?
Or just somewhere abroad generally? I don't know
Yeah,
what you can say.
I was abroad. And again, like I was abroad a couple times for just, most of the time was like for just training missions. Like
Hmm.
we would go serve with like the Georgians right next to Russia. Just do like some military exercises. We would go to like in Germany or Korea. We would do some things like that. But I did go out, a couple times for. I was part of a smaller group of at least my initial after airborne was what you do jumping out of planes. I was working with a more special group as their medic, and so they had shorter, more deployments often. So we would go to certain areas and kind of do the things that they do specialize in. So I had to be part of that a couple times. But yeah, it just most of it was mental. I was diagnosed with like major depression,
Sure.
which was a misdiagnosis because I had bipolar. But
It's partial diagnosis, I guess.
yeah,
But yeah.
but come to find out, the medication they were giving me actually makes the bipolar worse. So depressive meds do not help that bipolar. It makes it a lot worse.
Yep.
So I started acting out. I was smoking weed like badly, like a lot for military. That's bad. I was doing a lot of recreational drugs. I fortunately never got addicted to anything except for marijuana, which I didn't know was addictive. But I never got addicted to anything. I would do a lot of psychedelics, just anything to take me out of my mind and take me out of the things I experienced, both growing up and through the military. But that eventually was what led to me getting out. It was a psychological event that took me out. I tried to kill myself. And like I actually attempted it. I was saved, but I really did actually attempt it. Woke up in a mental institution on the military, and I was there for a couple of weeks, drugged up, being tested psychologically in every single way, just a zombie. And that basically led to me getting chaptered out the military.
Well, I mean, we touched on just a little bit in the pre-conversation, the things like bipolar disorder and various things. Sometimes trauma impacts a lot of these things. And,
Mm-hmm.
You had trauma on trauma on trauma. I mean, there's the family of origin trauma, the cult trauma, the military trauma that you experienced as well. I mean, I'm sure you experienced a lot in your life. And so I'm sorry that it's had such an impact. Obviously, that's what trauma does, but I'm sorry you had to go through a lot of those things. So were you disfellowshipped or something while you were in the Army? Did they like do the whole disfellowshipping and abstention type of thing? Like, or no, I'm sorry, what it's called, isn't it? You've disassociated by going to the Army. Like that's the way they a lot of times will see it, so
Mm-hmm.
that then they can't be accused of, well, you disfellowshipped somebody for going to the Army.
I was disfellowshipped.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah, I was. Like I didn't care. Like I expected. I remember I did Google a couple things about JWs when I was in the military, and I remember like writing a letter to the presiding overseer and the service overseer, and I was like, take me off of like, and I named the specific records that they would have, like even like to the number. I was like, take me off of this, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness. you have caused me so much harm. Like, I don't remember everything that I wrote,
But you
but I
kind of
wrote,
disassociated a little bit in your letter. It
yeah,
sounds like.
I disassociated in the letter. And then Ethan told me afterwards, I think it was him, maybe it was somebody else, but I think it was him that told me that I was disfellowship at some point while I was there or while I was gone. So there's that, which I'm okay with. I don't give a fuck, disassociate, disfellowship or inactive. I don't really care. I'm never coming back. I don't want to be back. I don't want to talk to any JWs. I don't want to do anything. I'm happy. And shortly after, my best friend left too, and he's so much happier for it. We still have our own issues, but
Well, sure.
like he left and I left, and I feel like that was definitely a big standout for the Kingdom Hall. Because they're starting to lose a lot of publishers to disfellowshipping. Even my stepdad was disfellowshipped at one point. I really wish I knew what it was for, but yeah, when I left and came back the first time, at some point there, my stepdad was disfellowshipped. So when I came back and moved into the house the second time, he was disfellowshipped that entire time. So that was kind of weird. Going to the Kingdom Hall with a disfellowship guy, a approved person, and then my mom and my sister just kind of like there.
Yeah.
But,
would it be safe to guess? Am I correct? So your stepdad called the commander, got his number or whatever. Is that the last you ever heard of them? I mean, was that it, or was there a point after you left the Army or somewhere in there? Did you ever hear from your family again?
there was a couple times. So in between all this, I reached out to my biological dad, and I got his number. Come to find out, I've got 5 brothers. I didn't know that. They're all younger than me, but him and I just started talking, getting to know each other, and then little by little, he actually came to visit me here in my family right after my last daughter was born. And so like we spent a good amount of time together, realized it's eerie how much our life was similar. Like in the way that like he was a medic, I was a medic. I'm like a chef the way that I cook. I cook amazing. That's one of the things I'm the most positive about myself, is the fact that I know I can cook really well. And it's a big thing for me confidence wise. But he's a chef. There's so many things that are so similar. Like, I was always a weed head. I would be if it wasn't for my bipolar. But like I got like little weed socks and like the weed shirts, weed hats. And like that's how he is too. He's got all of it, like little weed leaf everywhere. And he's like bipolar as fuck. And he's got a lot of similar issues that I have, except I take care of them. He doesn't. But that's a different story. But I started asking him about, why weren't you in my life, and what was going on, what really happened? Because there's a story that my family talks about, but they also refuse to talk about anything in detail. There was just, he was in prison. It wasn't a good influence. We moved to Florida. We have our own life. My mom, anytime he was brought up, she shuts down. She shuts down for everything. She'd rather ignore everything than talk about it or confront it. So started asking him, and he's telling me his side, where my mom gave him an ultimatum. He was Muslim. He was not going to get rid of that, but he didn't care if she was a JW. He is inclusive, like he is okay with all religions. He studied so many of them and he's okay with them. But she basically said, you divorce me and give me the rights, or I'm going to sue you for all these things. And like, he didn't have the money to really fight back. And my stepmom had the support of my stepdad and like all the other Jehovah's Witnesses. So essentially, before she became a baptized witness, she divorced him. So that way she wouldn't get in trouble with the congregation for an unscriptural divorce. And then like, that's how that happened. And then in the meantime, he was in prison. Like he was gone since I was, I think, 2 or 3 years old. I don't remember. But he would like write me letters and stuff. Apparently my mom got those and threw them away. So yeah, basically, I'm just finding out his side of the story of all the things he tried to do to be a father, and then how he was shunned. My last name is Cooper. I was forced into taking my stepdad's last name because I had my my dad's last name, and legally I became a Cooper instead because he was like your father was such a bad influence, a bad person, and like Cooper is like that's your name. You're part of this family. Um, I hated that name for the longest time, but I've made it my own now. It stands for something different than for them. But yeah, like down to even those little details, it was it was difficult. Like my birth certificate was changed, like all of these things. Um, but yeah, going back to that, so my dad told me all these things. In December, I went to Florida for a funeral for somebody on my wife's side, and my stepdad has reached out a couple times to like just check up on me. He knows that he has grandkids. He's like basically love bombing. So it's almost like, we forgive you, even though you're disfellowship, like it's okay. We'll always have love for you. Everything we've ever done was out of love for you. Um, and I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm nice about it. It's all right, blah, blah, blah. And then one time he reached out, was like, hey, we're going to be in North Carolina. Do you want, we can go visit so we can see our grandkids, spoil them and all this shit. And I told my wife about it, and I'm like, I didn't say, I never replied, but like, I don't want him to be around my kids. You were not good to me. You're not going to be around my kids. Like, I hate this fake bullshit that like you're pretending like, this is amazing, and you're going to be nice to your grandkids, but you're not going to accept me. And like I have tattoos everywhere. I've got, I'm completely different. At the time I had dreadlocks, big old beard. Completely different person that they ever expected. And I know they're gonna just be judging me the whole time.
Well, judging you and trying to prey upon your kids
Mm-hmm.
as
And
Jehovah's
so
Witnesses.
I I went to Florida, and I needed to get my birth certificate I think I'm trying to get a passport or something. I forgot what it was, but I needed my birth certificate. So I texted my stepdad because they're still in Florida, and it was going to be in Tarpon Springs. Ironically, my wife's family, a lot of them live in Tarpon Springs, and that's where my stepdad and mom live. So I texted him. I was like, "Hey, I need to get my birth certificate and whatever other documents. I'm gonna be there at this time." And I didn't tell him that my family was gonna be there, but he was like, "Okay, do you want to meet up?" And the whole family, we can meet each other. So it was him, my sister, and him, my sister, and my mom. They were there, and we met up at Chili's. And I was like, my heart was pounding. I was nervous because that was the first time I've seen them since I left for the army. Um,
How many years total had it been?
so 2017 is when I left. That was 2022.
Okay, so
So
5 years.
5 years. And in the meantime, apparently he had a massive stroke. So, I mean, I think he's like 38. Or he might be like 40 something now. But yeah, like he had a massive stroke. So like when I saw him, it was such a strange thing because I wanted to see like how they were. If I'm gonna let you see your grandkids, I needed to at the very least make sure that, I need to be comfortable having you be around my grandkid or your grandkids and my wife and them. I didn't tell them that they were there because I knew my wife. She knows a story about everything. I knew for a fact that she was going to go off on them. I didn't want to make a big scene. I just wanted to let me give you 30 minutes of my time and see what it's going to be. I get there. They look exactly the same as when I left them. It's like life is on pause for Jehovah's Witnesses. Everything is always the same. Every single talk is all the same rehashed bullshit. Everything, every person, every year, it's the same thing. They just get older and older.
Hmm.
The only difference was he was a lot weaker on his left side because he had a massive stroke. So he spoke a little bit slower. And like in a way, I kind of felt bad because I could tell it was really hard for him. But he was still the same thing. I remember my mom She looked like an empty shell of a human being. She did not speak to me the entire time, except for her first words were, "You look like a crazy person." Because I had like colorful clothes on, they were fitted, had long dreads, big beard, tattoos everywhere. And all that she was looking at was at my body and my tattoos and my hair. Didn't even look me in my eyes.
Appearance.
She said, "You look like a crazy person," within the first 2 minutes of the conversation. She was not looking at me. She looked and like she was just, again, all the life was sucked out of her. And then I showed her a picture because I took out the pictures. Here's what your grandkids look like. I showed it to my stepdad. He was all excited, love bombing and acting fake. And then I showed it to my mom, my mom, and she was like, "Why?" Because my wife is white. So she was like, "Why does your baby look so white?" And then that's it. And what's weird is like I'm mixed. My mom is Hispanic and my dad is Egyptian. So he's really dark, and my mom, she's white passing. Like she doesn't have an accent. She looks like she's the same skin color as my wife. So you would never think that she's anything but white. And so I'm just so confused as to like, why do you think this? Like, why are you saying this? This is a mixed baby. I'm a mixed baby. Your own son is a mixed child.
Why is this what we're talking about at all? First off,
Yeah.
my God.
And then like the only thing that was shocking but amazing was my little sister she's like an adult. She's over 21 now. Fucking weird seeing, because I left and she was like 15 when I left. She has her own car. She came in her work uniform. She's working as a pharmacist assistant, a pharmacist tech. So it was just so fucking weird. Like her and I were talking. It picked up like we never left. I could tell that like if I reached out to her, we could still talk like normal and she wouldn't like shun me. But my mom, she only talked, like brought up things to my sister and to my dad. She didn't bring anything up to me. And like I remember what made me realize that things were the same. He was still the same narcissistic asshole. Was my mom was trying to bring something up, and then he gave her the look. And that was the same look that he would give us that meant, "Shut the fuck up. Stop doing what you're doing. I have had it with this conversation. This is not what we're going to talk about." Like, just like control the air in the room. And I saw that. And in my head, I'm like, wow, nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing. You're sitting here talking all this lovey-dovey stuff. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, it goes
It
back
was
to
just, it was just such a shockingly, it was sad to me.
well, you're seeing it through different eyes now, and
Yeah.
it's the old it's the quote from Maya Angelou that is when someone shows you who they are, believe them. These are who your parents are, and sadly, it's not just your stepdad. Your mom is not proving herself to be very healthy either.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame. I mean, you're right. It's like that old movie Groundhog Day. Every day is the same for them. Nothing changes. They just play the same thing over and over and over again. Their life won't change much. They won't move very far forward in life. And I'm glad you could see that when you met with them, because I mean, again, I know I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I've seen people let Jehovah's Witnesses around their kids, and I've seen some of the damage that can cause. It can be horrific, and
yeah, no, I refuse. Like I mentioned before, I didn't get to grow up with that innocence.
Yeah.
I just wanted to watch cartoons and play with toys.
Yeah, your kids get to do that now.
That's what they get to do. They're not going to grow up hearing about, everybody that you see in school is going to die and everything's going to be engulfed in flames. And there's an omnipresent Lord over you that's always like watching you to make sure you're not tempted by a devil that he allows to harm you. They're just going to be kids. Fucking play around with shit, do things, mess up, make a mistake. You're not going to get grounded. You're not going to be in trouble. You're going to talk. We're going to have a great time. You're going to love life. I'll do whatever I can to make you happy and like give you a good life. But yeah, and like I remember seeing that after we left the restaurant, my stepdad gave me a big old fake hug, you know, just again, being the same way he used to be. I went to go give my mom a hug and she just like shrugged herself and closed off. Didn't even, again, say bye. So then I turn around, my sister just like runs into my arms and gives me the biggest hug in the world. And that was, again, the only genuine interaction the whole time was her and I. And then the last time I saw them, that's honestly the last time I'll ever see them unless my mom or stepdad die. I'll go to attend their funeral. So I don't ever plan on seeing them again. I've cut them off from everything. The only other interaction I have with them is I talked to my stepdad again on the phone about a couple months ago because I wanted to ask him things. I was like, why did you not, like, why did you lie about my dad? I just questioned everything about my life? Why did you know, like, did you know that I tried to kill myself on multiple occasions, that I was having this depression and that? And all he gave me was these bullshit excuses of, we tried our best. We understood that you were sad. And we were only doing things was to help you. And it was only out of love for you. And we still love you so much. You'll always be our son. And your dad, you know how they have different perspectives. We say one thing, he might say another. But I've confirmed this because I talked to my grandfather, who is also a Jehovah's Witness. And he talks to me regularly. He lives here in North Carolina. He doesn't give a fuck that I'm disfellowship. We're close like we used to be. And he confirmed all these things too. So it's like two people are saying that this is what happened, and then you're making up some things to protect.
Well, yeah, and your questions were being answered in a way that was all about defending him and them and how they behaved. And it was nothing about, oh my gosh, I'm sorry you felt this way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that, we weren't there for you, or I'm sorry we didn't know about this or that. We should have been more involved, or, just any of those things. There's no ownership of anything, is there? It's all just, well, we're beyond reproach and you've got problems.
That's all it was. It was like, we're sorry you felt this way. I'm sorry that you did this. We're sorry that you felt you had to do this. You.
Yeah.
Everything was always, I did this because of me, instead of like, I'm not blaming. I even told him that. I was like, I'm not blaming all the mistakes of my life on you. You provided me with a lot. We went from poverty to having a nice home. I was able to eat well. I was able to be comfortable in life. That's not a privilege that a lot of people get to have. If I live with my dad, he did live in a bad area. He lived in a bad way, and like, who knows how I would have been raised living with him.
Yeah, but material things is not high class parenting.
It's not. Like, that's the thing, is like, he gave me good things that I wouldn't have been able to have if I wasn't with him, probably. I never had the choice though. Like, if I had known about my dad, I would have had the option to move with him, have him have custody if I was like aware. But I didn't have that choice. I was stuck. And so I told him this. I was like, I'm not blaming everything on you, but you were a major factor. You and this religion were a major factor of why I still am in so much therapy and have to deal with so much. I still struggled with suicidal thoughts until about 3 years ago, like right before I met my wife and kids. And like, confronting him was my final point of catharsis. I was giving him everything, telling him all my feelings and my thoughts. I was open and honest. He wasn't. And since then, the only communication I have is I'll send him apostate literature, like just via text message. Like, I'll send him like a link to your podcast, or I'll send him a link to like the bite model of what a cult is, or a YouTube link of, this is what the the governing body is saying, like the Toni Morris thing, sexual abuse thing. Like I send him all these links that I know that he's never gonna look at because it's apostate shit. But like it's just kind of like my little troll on him, just spam him with just things. If he reads it, it'll be better for him. But I know he won't.
Well, I
It's
mean, they
still just
usually
like
have no problem proselytizing and sending JW materials
exactly.
to Jehovah's Witnesses. So, hey, why not? Here's some things you can read as well.
Exactly.
I guess you're going to have another link to send them here shortly.
Yeah, I would. Oh, I'm 100% sending this.
Wow. So you have moved on. You do have your own life now. Healing is a process, not an event. It's a process of growth. It's a process of deconstructing all of the things that we're carrying around that are a part of us that don't serve us, and letting go of those things that were, from the cult and from our upbringing, so that we can be more of who we are. What do you like about your life today? So you're married and you have kids. Like what's good in your world today? And are there things that you're hoping to move towards?
So I will say the religion has made me very self-aware, and that has been good and bad. So initially, when I got out the military, I had no purpose. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no more direction. I didn't want to be in the medical field anymore because of all the trauma that I saw through the military. So it was a really dark time. I was doing a lot of drugs and experimenting with shit and around a lot of bad people. I met my wife though. And basically from the day that we met, I basically moved in with her. Like I went over that night to meet her, and literally every single day till this point, we have not left each other. I never even asked her out. It was just assumed until I got, I proposed to her. She already had 3 kids. I have 4 of them, but she already had 3 kids from a previous relationship. My 2-year-old, my almost 3-year-old, she was a couple, I think almost just over a month old when I moved in. So basically she was raised like she doesn't know any different. I'm her dad. But yeah, like with her, my life has been amazing. My self-awareness has allowed me, and like the honesty with her has allowed me to approach all of my mental issues, my depression, my mania, my bipolar, my PTSD, and my life goals with a much positive view. I was such a negative person before that, and now I have positivity. I get to be myself. She accepts me for who I am. She encourages me for everything. Like I have an amazing career. I'm in sales. I make good money and take care of the family, do really well, a lot of flexibility. I'm actually finally using my resources from the military to go to school. So here, probably in the next year or 2, I'm gonna be going to college. I hope to get a PhD soon. But at the very least, I'm going to get my master's degree. I'm trying to be into therapy. So like counseling people, helping them, things like that. And just spending time with my family, giving them the life I never did. Just spending time with my worldly friends, having a beer or 2 on occasion. Spending time with my dad, which is great. We have like a good relationship now. And yeah, just pursuing my passions, my dreams, my enjoyment. Like I mentioned, I still go to therapy, and I have I'm about to get a service animal soon. So but I'm doing things to help me mentally. I actually take care of mental health instead of pray to Jehovah. Um, I've been studying different religions. I'm not a religious person. I don't think I'll ever believe in like a God or anything like that, but like today I went to a Buddhist temple, and like Buddhism is something I'm interested in learning. Not necessarily to believe in, but I like the meditation and the peace
There's
that
some
it
cool
has.
principles.
Yeah. And so, pick up some cool things that I can apply to my life. My therapist always tells me I should meditate. So why not learn from the best? They know how to meditate better than anybody else. So yeah, my life has been finally good. and happy. And I don't focus on the scary, bad devil and the negative things that will happen if I don't blindly follow these 6 old guys that run this corporation that pretends to be a religion. I'm free and I'm happy.
Oh, I think that's the way to end. You're free and you're happy. I'm glad that today maybe you didn't get to watch cartoons on Saturday mornings when you were a kid, but I'm glad that you get to give that to your kids today and, yourself as well. You've got your own Saturday mornings. You can do what
I
you
still
want.
watch cartoons on the Saturday, and I'll
Heck
have a
yeah.
bowl of Fruit Loops, and I'll wake up at 10 a.m. I don't gotta go knock on random people's doors on a Saturday morning and get them pissed off.
Yeah. So now you get to be free and happy. And I'm so glad that, you've been through so much and you definitely deserve that opportunity, that chance, like so many, to find that freedom and happiness. So I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Of course, and thank you for giving me this platform. It actually definitely got me to kind of go over some things that I maybe didn't think of before. So a nice little way to let go.
Now that's awesome.